Thanks for that Prime Gaming sub. We see you.
Welcome back to Smite Masters, powered by our good friends over at Prime Gaming, the title sponsor of Season 9 of the SPL. And Amazon Prime and Prime Gaming in general is kind of like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get out of there. One thing that we can let you know is that all those games shown on the trailer and more can be yours so long as you have a Prime Gaming subscription, as well as exclusive content for all the games that you're already playing. So if you have a Prime membership, then connect your Twitch account so you can get Prime Gaming and get all the great content there. If you don't have a Prime membership already, make sure that you get one so you can get free delivery on all those items that you're already probably going to be buying from Amazon, plus all the other great content that comes from there. And then obviously, then you link it to your Twitch account and you get all the cool stuff from Prime Gaming. So thank you so much, Prime Gaming, for being the title sponsor of Season 9 of the SPL. I'm Jay. I got Ro with me joining here on the desk as we get ready to go into our first qualification game of the day. It's going to be the Olympus Bolts up against the Jade Dragons.
Yeah, my old team, Olympus Bolts, up against Jade Dragons.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the first and second in the league. They just played, I don't know, was that a month ago? Maybe 5 weeks ago, something like that.
Feels like a month.
Very, very competitive at the top of the league. You know, completely different meta we're seeing now. All the SEC teams so far have played. Hounds still playing, obviously. But, you know, Dragons coming out with this kind of, I guess I would call it insane strategy of this 3 hunters. You could call it 4 if you include Poseidon in that. Just a lot of objective DPS. They played Fafnir early, even adding that objective DPS onto that. Whereas Bolts kind of just playing their style. We saw Morrigan, Daji. That's typical of what I would expect from my old team. You know, they picked it all of last year as well. So I think, you know, they just keeping what they had going on into this new meta. But, you know, we'll see if Dragons can kind of change that.
Yeah, the Olympus Bolts, that last draft that they had really just felt like they were playing the exact same game that they were in 9.4. It feels like they haven't made any, I'm not going to say they haven't really made adjustments to the new meta, but they haven't needed to just yet. We'll see if they need to up against the Jade Dragons. Picks and bans for game number 1 of our best of 3. Winner moves on to the final group and then moves on to this long bracket of going up into the finals and whatnot. There's a whole track that they're going to follow. We'll talk more on that later on. The loser doesn't go home yet. Instead, they have to face off against the winner of the Valks and the Hounds that will come up immediately after. The first change is that we are seeing what used to be a reserved ban for Sam for Soccer specifically, but now just as in general, kind of that meta, as you say, Mercury taken away first.
Yeah, not surprising at all to see it, though, because, you know, maybe if a normal team would be willing to play into a normal Mercury, no team's really willing to play into a Sam for Soccer Mercury. That's a whole different beast. Jingwei, definitely part of the meta. Nox, we just saw Jake play, and he's obviously valued it so far in this season. But now we really get to see, you know, which team, you know, were Bolts hiding something? Were they just playing their normal style because they don't think anything's different, or were they just hiding something going up against Jade Dragons? And then on the flip side, we get to see, did Jade Dragons really believe in this meta? Is that their normal draft, or was that just kind of a best of 1 cheese against the Hounds that included the objective DPS comp and the insane amount of pressure? You know, we've talked about Jade Dragons before being a very pressure-heavy roster, I suppose, and they really enjoy that kind of playstyle, so maybe it is something they've fully adopted. We'll have to wait and see.
Maybe a bit of an interesting ban here out of the side of the Olympus Bolts. The Jingwei, not surprising at all, but Thoth making his way here. I mean, Pagon has shown success on this god. We've seen what players like Crimson can do with it. We've seen just the success that Thoth has through the tournament, but it seems like a very odd kind of first-round ban coming from the Bolts.
We have seen Pagon, you know, do great things on Thoth, but his god pool is very deep. You know, he's
everything.
Played, and he played a lot of those things against Bolts in the last matchup as well. So I guess Thoth just something they respect out of Pagon, but also something that they respect out of the tournament so far. A good god in the current meta.
Oh, that just reminds me, I completely had forgotten that the last time these two teams squared off was during that seeding tournament, and every single game, Pagon had found a solo kill up against Veneno, a very heated rivalry in that mid lane. So maybe Veneno just saying, guys, I just don't want to be soloed from that far away again.
Yeah, if you want to fight me, you have to come in close, which, you know, Veneno, he was playing that Morrigan last game, so maybe he'll run it back this game, something that can fight back a little bit more. If Pagon was to take a fight in lane against at least a post-level 5 Morrigan, then that would give Veneno a chance to transform and counter that fight. But, I don't know, first pick, there's a Jingwei's banned, so we won't see that again. Nox, a pretty high-value first pick out of Bolts is banned as well, so they're looking deeper in the pool now, and something that I imagine will identify their team comp. They could look towards, they played Osiris last game, which is a decent first pick because you can flex it between jungle and solo. I think it is better than solo, but Yamoja, a great default pick, something that I imagine Dragons must have expected, so I would assume that they have something in mind for this. Baron, a great matchup already.
Yeah, the Yamoja sitting at I think it's at 72% ban rate. The few times that this god has been able to make it through, she has been a high-impact god for whatever support has been piloting her. But the Jade Dragons, in response, do get to pick up Baron Samedi and Chernabog. Now, with the flexibility of Baron, with this team specifically, we know that more often than not, he has been going over to the solo lane. But PBM, up until, I think that seeding tournament, did have a 100% win rate on the Baron Samedi with, I think it was like 11 or 12 games.
That's a lot, yeah. So I think they can still flex it between solo lane and support, obviously. It's even stronger in solo lane now than it used to be. It's also a great pick into the Osiris that I was just talking about. So if hi-rez was to look towards that Osiris, he would have to play into Baron, which is not a great matchup. An early pick of Xbalanque here. So again, I think we're seeing a lot of late game hunters come into play. Not many of them are boxing or fighting each other in lane. So if they scale well, then they kind of just fit into this meta. Chernabog great at that, Xbalanque great at that. Cleaner also decent at scaling as well, but that'll bring some of that early pressure bolts we'll need against this Dragons team comp.
The Dragons will go with an Amuzin Cobb, so Chernabog and AMC, potentially solo. We did see the AMC solo up against the Hounds previously with Fine OK. Chernabog, we've also seen flex over towards the solo, the mid, and the Hunter role, so still some ambiguity amongst the Jade Dragons roster with all three of these picks. Meanwhile, with the Bolts, aside from maybe Kleena jungle as kind of, it's weird to say it's kind of the spicier pick now to see Kleena in the jungle, a little bit more of a clear-cut draft. So for the Olympus Bolts, I mean, where do you kind of put your priority in those bans? Do you take solo lanes? Do you take supports? Do you ban mids here?
Look, if I was coaching the team, and I've done that before, I would still say it's a really hard call just based on what Jade Dragons have played so far today. You know, if you're looking towards the team comp that they had against the Hounds, they had, you know, a more objective DPS. They had Poseidon, and they had an extra Hunter as well. So you have to predict, you know, was that their meta? Is that what they want to do this game as well? Already it looks like they're doing it so far. So do you ban Hunters and do you ban objective DPS? Looks like Jade Dragons ban Poseidon away from themselves almost, but that does, you know, Poseidon a pick that Venenu's played as well. It'll give that mid pressure, which is, you know, something to fight back against Pagon. So maybe if they want to ban away those things, give Pagon, you know, maybe an Ula or give him the AMC, then he can look for those solo kills as well.
First two bans through with that Poseidon and then the Morrigan for the Dragons, so focus towards the mid lane. Habois, the ban as a mid, also as a jungle up against the Jade Dragons, and with one more ban left to go, the Bolts have probably one of the tougher decisions. Do they maybe expend another ban towards Sam? The answer is yes there. They will take Serket off the table. But now with Dodgy, Nemesis, Serket, and Mercury all taken away, what are the options for these two teams to start going towards that jungle role?
I guess it may push Kleena towards the jungle a little bit. I would have said Fenrir for Lasbur as well, but that's taken away, which I imagine is for Sam. I can't imagine him on you know, any of the other gods in the jungle at least. But a Janus definitely in the mid lane coming out from Ven, something he's always felt is strong. So already strong team fight, but also a lot of mobility on the side of like Kleena, Umoja bouncing people around, and Janus portals on the side of Bolt. So it's going to be difficult for Jade Dragons to lock someone down, even though they have the Fenrir and the pull in from Baron.
Well, maybe it will be Kleena going over towards solo. Set locked in. Now, this is a pick that among the SCC teams, they really put a lot of value. Players like Oath and Sad Dragon, they really would run it down with this pick. Even Johnny was a huge proponent for this assassin. And it's going to be squaring up against Susano, which I'm going to be honest, I think this Pagon.
Yeah, a great matchup into Janus. Something maybe Ven should have expected. I think maybe he did expect it already and is still confident playing into that. But Susano, a typical matchup, can follow him through the portals, very mobile, so you can just basically box that mage whenever you want. But he has to be scared of committing too much of that mobility forward into the Janus when there could be a set in the jungle who can easily chase him down as well. I think the set, a pretty intelligent pick against Chernabog, a great pick against AMC. Not too worried about the Fenrir as well, and somebody that isn't too worried about Baron. So overall, a decent pick. This comp is kind of everywhere for the Bolts. Very mobile, so they can fight when they need to. But the Jade Dragons, they definitely want to group up and do some brawling in the early game from their lane pressure.
Yeah, it does feel like a very scrappy composition out of the Dragons. Now, we saw SOT take the Chernabog to the solo lane, saw a lot of success. We saw Fine OK take a Amuzin Cobb to the solo lane. So if you're the Dragons, maybe if you're the coach of the Dragons kind of in their mind, would you rather have this Chernabog go to the solo lane, or would you rather Fine OK just run the AMC again?
I think you'd rather just run it back and put the Baron in support and the Chernabog in ADC. Just let the Chernabog farm up. You can still get value out of that global ultimate from Pandacat, if he's the Chernabog that is, by just going up and then back down, just to slow people, give vision and stuff like that. And the AMC has I would say a decent matchup into Cleaner as well. I don't think we'll see a whole lot happening there unless hi-rez gets really aggressive on the Cleaner. But yeah, I just think that matchup would be better for AMC rather than Chernabog against the Cleaner at least.
So with the Jade Dragons, a lot of objective priority, you know, with this double hunter, you throw a Fenrir in there. We've been seeing a lot of the auto attack style build that comes from that assassin. So if the Jade Dragons wanting to play around here, I mean, how does their team fight look going up against Bolts? I mean, once we're hitting potentially 30 some odd minutes, I mean, you're fighting into Darkest of Nights, the Shibalanke, plus Yamoja walls. How does the Jade Dragons team fight look up against the Bolts?
Jade Dragons kind of just have to find an initiation, whether that's a Fenrir stun, that could be a Fenrir ult, obviously. Susano can blink pull or just pull from around the corner, and then you're setting up for Baron to pull them in even further, and that's what pulls them into the range of the AMC ult, the Chernobog root, and things like that. That's where the real damage comes in, and what Yamoja's going to have to be careful for. Set will have to respect on his dives and stuff like that. So I think it's just finding targets that are in front of them and just, you know, testing the waters constantly, just pulling in, stunning, you know, Fenrir biting, Baron ulting and stuff like that. Just keep testing the waters. Eventually they'll find a target, and as long as Set doesn't punish them, they should be safe.
So then in that instance, you know, when these team fights, if the Dragons are able to find, you know, a couple of picks in that instance, for the Olympus Bolts, does it come down to them getting to the late game? Is that where they'll have their strength over the Dragons, or do they need to start getting involved maybe a little bit earlier?
I think it's relatively even, actually, in the late game. I think it's just going to come down to how the Cleaner and the Set react to these engagements from Jade Dragons. If they don't react well, then they're going to get behind early, and once one of these squads starts snowballing, it's over for the others.
Well, game number 1 underway between the Olympus Bolts and the Jade Dragons. Who's going to take it? Let's find out with Blazy and Gore.
Thank you, JMac and Ro. Of course, this is going to be the first best of 3 of the day, and also the first game where one of these teams can potentially find themselves progressing on through till the next set of brackets, which will be played tomorrow? Tomorrow.
No, we're gonna wait 3 weeks. Actually, no, yeah, it's tomorrow. It is tomorrow. Best of 3s all the way through from this point out as well. And the thing that's really exciting, tomorrow's fun. Just because it's still, you know, you're still in a double elim scenario, right? And so you're still looking at some of these teams having to push themselves forward. You know, there's going to be quite a few sets. I think 4 best of 3s tomorrow, and then 2 sets on Sunday before we get to a final winner. And just slowly kind of whittling down from 4 teams. Right now, there's still the 6 left. And one of these 2 is going to be very happy after this one. I'm really interested. So we were talking about it. I'd made the joke, and I'd said, hey, what if they did Baron jungle? And then I started going, bleh, because I don't like the idea, the concept, or the execution of anything that could happen.
And it's not Baron jungle.
It is, over there in support, but it's a pretty squishy team on the side of the Dragons early on. And so I'm just gonna have fun watching how this one shakes out. I think that this is a team that, given what we've seen in the past, I expect this Baron to be a really good frontliner. We know Fenrir can take up a lot. And realistically, we know how this team plays comps like this. They will run you down. They will find kills. They're really exceedingly good at damage. But it's going to be a little shaky, right? We've seen some of the triple... I guess this isn't technically triple hunter. This is double hunter, but one's still over there in solo lane.
Yep, and a Pagon in mid with the Susano.
which
is wild.
But it's like, you know, I see Sam on Fenrir. I know that works. I see Pagon on Susano. I know that works. I see Pandacat on Cherno, Mike on Baron. We know that works. Up until recently, Mike had a 100% win rate on this guy. It's just the AMC, and it's not necessarily do I not trust FinoK. I think FinoK is going to play it lights out. But he is a little slow on rotations, and I think that's going to be maybe the difference maker. I think Kleena could get a little more hands-on in the fights than maybe we'll see out of the AMC.
And we've already seen hi-rez has just such a willingness to rotate to these fights at different points in the game. So I believe rotated over to that first quadra kill that that Lasber got 8 minutes to the last set. So hi-rez definitely is willing to rotate to these fights, and absolutely 100% FinoK is going to struggle, especially in the early game. Once he gets a couple of those hives a little bit more leveled up, he's got a little bit more movement speed on the board. He can get around a little bit easier, but until then, it's going to be a bit difficult for him. Pagon, though, in the mid lane. How does this Susano work, Gore? Tell me.
Now, so here's the fun thing, right? And I'm going to use this. I'm going to answer your question, and it's going to be a very long, convoluted answer. And hopefully I'll have time to, and we won't see too much aggression. But, you know, and this is going to tie in a little bit of FinoK. Normally what we've seen over the last couple of days has been, you know, the triple ADC. You'll have one hunter over there and left, one in mid, one in solo. And that's what we've seen a few times. And the problem has been, I think the most success we saw yesterday was the Titans running the Chernobog. He could rotate over. Late game, it was really interesting because you had 3 really squishy but high damaging backliners. And so that was something that was really, I think, difficult to balance. Sometimes you would absolutely win, and sometimes you'd die before it was even started. This time around, and I think it's just that what FinoK and what Pagon are going to do are the opposites of what Haddix and Vin are going to do. Haddix and Vin are going to be able to play pretty much the standard style that we've seen out of them. Pagon is going to play like an assassin. He's not going to play like a mid laner. He's going to play the same way that this Susano has been played the last few times that he's played. He's going to be in your face. He's going to get a lot of kills, presumably. And right now, Vin's just happy that it's not on him yet, right? The last few times we've seen this, it has dominated. It has dominated this matchup, and it has dominated this mid lane. And I think between him, the Fenrir, and PBM, there's a lot of setup and kickstarters for the fights, which means that, in my mind, FineOK and Panda should be cruising in the late game. You've got two really hard-hitting assassins that are going to have a lot of good CC up front, and then really hard-hitting carries right behind them to take advantage of all that CC. So I think that Pagon is just going to get aggressive. It's just the question of when. Right now, with TTK changes, probably not anytime like in the next couple minutes.
Yeah.
But level 5 already on Fenrir. He's got his ult as well. At the drop of a hat, I think the two of them can combine for an easy kill.
For sure, and I think this Jade Dragons lineup has a little bit of a better time engaging onto those backliners that we saw in their game earlier, right?
Yeah.
Earlier on, they just like Poseidon, AMC, I believe there was an Artemis in the mix, and the Fafnir obviously to lead it up, but there was no real get into the back. So luckily for them, they were just able to like go in through the front, right? But this time around, you know, Pagon's going to be able to get on those backliners.
Yep.
Sam's going to be able to get on those backliners. Panda Cat's able to fly in if they have that much space to do so. And on top of that, Susano, you know, super good against Giannis. Classically one of the few junglers who
follow
can
him.
track him and you know, be able to chase down the Susano well. So I don't hate this pick from Pagon whatsoever.
Actually, that's maybe my favorite interaction of it, very specifically for this entire matchup, is just... And look, we got to talk about it. There was that 1 week, and I wish I had the exact numbers, but it was like most first bloods, and it was Pagon with like 5 or 6, and then most first blooded, most deaths was Venenu on the other side. And it's just because Pagon, I mean, just absolutely sat and controlled this lane. And I think that already this is a good sign from Vin because things have slowed down because of 9.5. It's not already out of hand, so they managed that. But at any point, if this Susano gets aggressive, cool, I'm going to throw a Storm Cloud at you. Take a portal, I'm going to follow you through. Don't take the portal, I'm going to kill you right here. Giving that option of where do you want to die as opposed to can you get away is something that is impressive. And I think is going to be fun for the Dragons, going to be able to create a lot of opportunities for them. And the only way to really deal with that is for Vin, instead of portaling away to just find safety and get to any wall and get through it, is going to have to instead play, where can I go that if I die, you still have to commit and die anyway? Like, where can we go that it's at least a trade? And hopefully it won't come down to that, but I can see that interaction happening already in my mind. It feels like it's a premonition.
It's definitely going to be a lot riskier, isn't it? Coming onto these towers, they're doing a lot more damage here in 9-5. You really, well, you know what?
Okay, you
say that. We've seen a couple of these dive plays.
We saw a 7-minute tier 2 dive the other day.
Yeah, I mean, we saw, what was it, from the Titans diving onto Captain Twig's Carly. Nemesis double dash like straight under, gets stunned out, dies in 2 shots. So you totally can.
Yeah,
is it a good idea? I think
Advisable.
it's the question you got to ask yourself for sure.
Maybe, you know what? Maybe it could be. I guess it really depends. Like, what do you get out of it, and how immediately are you gonna die? Tier 2s, like right now, Pagon. I don't know if I like this one. That's a tier
not.
1. Still a little shaky, but I feel a little more confident about it. I do like how aggressive they're playing the jungle though.
And Susano too, you know, very good at getting those engagements. Speaking of engagements, also Jake taking a little bit of damage. PBM does use that ultimate, tries to pull in Venenu, but the ultimate's going to keep him perfectly fine and safe. So no real form of aggression here in the mid lane from the Jade Dragons that is successful.
And I like where the ideas are going. Like, I'm looking down at the builds. First off, you can already see the Dragons are looking for blood now. So they felt like they're online enough to get some damage out there. At the minimum, they forced some ults. Still able to maybe wait and force some relics here soon. But either way, creating opportunities and soon enough being able to pay off for the aggression in the jungle that they've already had. But when I'm looking down towards where their builds are, first off, I see 2 Hydras and a Devos, so there's 3 stacking items. Probably going to give it about a minute and a half once those are fully stacked. And then a huge power spike all of a sudden for Pagon for FineOK if he makes any rotations to mid. That'll be a big swing. But it's the Doom Orb on the other side that catches my eye, I think, more than anything, because it's picked up for Vin. not only is it going to be good damage for him, but realistically, I'm looking at the movement speed, because if I'm thinking, this guy can follow me through my portal, what do I do?
Run away.
I want to run a little faster. And already, you know, you've got your 3, that threshold that speeds you up, slows them down. Now you've got extra movement speed coming from the Doom Orb. Theoretically, this is going to be a good build to keep Vin alive in the face of what is going to be a ton of people trying to chase him down and try to kill him. So with 2 assassins on the other side and a Baron to try and lock you up, I think this is a good pickup first to help make sure that you can hit hard and stay safe.
And it's something that we've been seeing so commonly from these mid laners, but hi-rez could be in some trouble. Sam off the mark with the leap, but that's going to be the beads from hi-rez. He's going to find himself into a wall, and therein lies the power of Cleo. The ultimate is coming through, though, at Barracuda. He's able to hit that through space of time, connects onto Sam for Soccer from halfway across the universe, but Lasbro does not have the chase potential. Turning around, Pagon looking for that Typhoon, but it's only going to knock up Lasbro. That should be it for now, but Jake's along the left.
Yeah, Jake and Mike are in their own little world with 2 supports just hitting each other. I was wondering if Sam was going to try to go on to Jake, but I actually like him pulling back there. If that leap connects, there's a world, the leap connects, the stun goes through, and then you're looking at beads specifically getting picked up there from hi-rez, burned before the Fenrir ult. And that makes a massive difference. If those beads are down and he picks them up, hi-rez is dead. That's not even a fight. Instead, Sam misses the leap. The ult has to come through. Beads are in response. So, yeah, you've got an easier target now, but it allows a lot more opportunity for the bolts to push back. Granted, they don't get a kill. Sam gets precariously close, but does not die. And so it doesn't end up costing them too much for that amount of aggression, but that is one of the downsides. You have to be a little more on point, I think, here if you're the Dragons to make sure that execution doesn't end up costing you your life.
No, absolutely. Sam for Soccer needs to hit those jumps. And I think we can chalk that up to an anomaly, right? This is not something that we see Sam miss every jump. It's just unfortunate that time around. I do want to point out, though, the hi-rez Lament getting built out here for Sam for Soccer in that second slot, really wanting to power through these early levels, get as much damage on the board as possible.
Yeah, that is going to hurt. Like, if he decides that you're the target, you are going to take a lot of damage. And I like the follow-up, because if you think about it, like the way I'm imagining a lot of Fenrir's, outside of Brutalize, jump, auto, Brutalize, then eventually you're going to be hitting a little bit. Yeah, you're going to be hitting a ton in between, so it should work, does work incredibly well with the hi-rez. But it does make me think that Sam is looking for more fights. He's looking for more pressure. He's trying to find, whether it's hi-rez, whether it's the Giannis, hell, if it's Lasbro, as long as he can find someone, he wants to be able to find that. It's just going to be the follow-up, because they went 2 stacking items into 2 more stacking items. It's really interesting that the Dragons, especially with the farm they've amassed, with the pace that they're trying to set in this game, are going with the builds as slow as they are.
But, like, it doesn't seem to be affecting them all
Not
that
at
much,
all.
right? Pagon has the fully stacked Transcendence, so does Fino. They want these Soul Eaters so that they can keep, continuing through these fights. They're doing a lot of ability damage already with the fully stacked Transcendence. So I'm not sure that it's slowing them down all that much. Like, sure, it's going to take them a little while, but Soul Eater as well, you got to remember, this is a very quickly stacking item, and hi-rez picked up again, but the beads are back up, so he's going to be fine once more. Sam for Soccer not quite able to re-gank before the beads come up, but Jake and the rest are rotating right.
Well, Barra should be fine here. Yeah, Darkest of Night gets used, which honestly might be a bigger deal than anything. First, it extends the range of his autos, so a little bit of a trade that he can get against Panda, which makes a lot of fun. And honestly, there's something to be said about Barra with ult being able to hit outside the tower line alongside like a Trebuchet at some point. That'd be kind of cool. But that's such a small interaction that I really doubt we'll see it too often, especially considering how useful that ult is, just stripping away the vision, and that's the biggest thing from that. Getting that ult, PandaCat has a distinct advantage now, and the team has an advantage now where they don't have to worry about retaliation from the bolts, and specifically them just shutting off the lights. If you get aggressive around the Gold Fury, if you try to pick a fight, you're going to be able to maintain that vision. Barra's not going to be able to be an impact from it on the left-hand side, while PandaCat, admittedly without his ult, can't teleport over, still is going to be able to feel, I think, a little bit more impactful, especially if it comes on cooldown a little faster.
PBM looking to pull in Jake here, and there's a lot of CC, but this is a Yamoja who can take a lot. Lasbra is going to jump in here. Pagon uses that ultimate, still trying to put the damage onto AOJ, but Lasbra's going to find first blood onto 2. People fall down. Pandacat looking to find a trade of some kind, but it's not going to matter. Look at that army of sand clones piling up for the triple for Lasbra.
Now, Pagon, like, just for like continuity's sake, can you just like int really hard to give Lasbra a quadra? It just feels so wild to see him start off 2 games in a very similar fashion, very explosive, and you saw good damage from Pandacat there early on. You saw good damage from Sam. I think the isolation was smart, but maybe not the target acquisition, right? A lot of damage onto Jake, not a lot onto Lasbra, and instead they've been turning it around. Pagon barely able to get out of there, but you lose a Fury in the process. You lose so much in that small fight. And what was like a 3,000, almost 4,000 gold lead there for the Dragons gets just absolutely sliced down from one really good play by the Bolts.
I was literally just about to mention the gold lead, but I had no time to. Lasbra, look at this. And obviously the pre-beads to stop the Typhoon from knocking him up there. Just the sheer amount of damage Sek can do is absolutely ridiculous. And you see, actually, he nearly falls down here, able to get some body blocks behind the rest of his team. And, well, there they go.
And that the start of that highlight, 35,700-ish for the Dragons. It was like 31,900. Like, they were just a couple hundred off of getting a full 4,000 gold lead. And now look at the Bolts. They're the ones choosing the fights.
They still want to keep this pressure up. They've got the momentum. Now it's time for them to swing with it. Sam for Soccer, the first one claimed in this engagement. Lasbra's going to take credit for this kill. No Pyromancer available, Gore, but the tier 1 tower is an option, and so is the potential fly giant, but it's going to be Barracuda over here on the left-hand side. Panicat already uses his ult, as has Pagon. And, well, Barracuda is Pagon.
Yeah, he's gone.
You're welcome.
I like, that's what I expect out of this Susana, right? Come over, whether you're the one dealing the damage or not, if it's just the knockup. I don't really care as long as you are active in the game. And that's one of the downsides. I think 9.5 has slowed down the beginning portion of a game where a comp like this would have just been finding, like 2 minutes in, finding first blood, 3 minutes in, they're up 3 kills, 5 minutes in, they're up 10 kills. Like, it wants to steamroll, and it wants to steamroll fast. And a 9.4 and anything prior to this, it probably would have. But here, you know, having to force Pagon to play a little slower, not allowing you to dive these tier 1s as easily, it's taken a little longer to get there. And there's still going to be 2 late-game Assassins, 2 late-game Hunters, and 1 late-game Mage support, which maybe doesn't sound as good as it could if it was like a Guardian. But I think the concept is still there for the Dragons, but it does get a little more difficult when you're going up against Set, who's a late-game hypercarry, Barracuda on Xbalanque, who's a late-game hypercarry, Haddix on Kleena, who's phenomenal, and then you've got healing coming from Jake. I think the Bolts scale really well into the late game and should be able to deal with the Dragons. It's just a question of overwhelming damage versus sustainability. And
on top of that, you know, they got Venenu here for this global rotation potential.
Yeah,
the really only match they have for that on the Jade Dragons is just Pandacat, right?
Yeah.
So Pandacat ults and the whole of Olympus bolts. Say, like, Barracuda's on the left-hand side, everyone else is in mid. Pandacat, for some reason, is ulting from mid to left to try and fight Barra, right? The rest of the Dragons are all in mid still, and the Bolts can just use that ultimate all the way over to the left-hand side and just...
They can just leave.
Zerg rush, yeah.
They just decide, you know what? Yeah, we don't want to be here anymore.
Literally.
They can move around. And again, that makes me think, as Season 7, one of my favorite plays I think that we got was out of a Giannis. And it was a feint from E-United on the left side Phoenix, then you Giannis portal over to the right Phoenix, and all of a sudden you're able to get a little more aggressive, control the entire side of the map, and they are trudging through mid by the time the Phoenix goes down. And that's the thing that Giannis opens up for me. So I wouldn't mind seeing more of that from Vin. So far it's been, can I kill you by hitting this ult? And honestly, I think we saw a lot of that last year. If you're Giannis and your ult hits, your team wins the fight. If you're Giannis and the ult misses, your team probably loses the fight. And it was just that easy of a coin flip. I think it's gotten a little more complicated than that lately, but it is still somewhat simple, which is that if Vin, you know, 1, gets his harpies, but 2, is able to hit his ult, it gives him just such a huge advantage with the amount of damage it does.
Well, and you can use that too. You know, there's a 3-pronged strategy, especially when you're up against these objectives. You know, if you're Venenu, you're ulting from base with the rest of your team, and the Jade Dragons are doing Gold Fury or Fire Giant, there's a potential for you to not only drop box your entire team into the file bin of the Fire Giant's general area, but you also can hit someone, you can hit the objective as well. There's a lot of utility that you get from Yanasalt that you just don't get from other things.
Now, what I'm most curious in, they just started moving it, but the Dragons have stacked up 2 trebuchets. They got the last 2 obelisks, so they've got 1 trebuchet on left that's still unmoving. And just now, FineOK activated the one in mid. It looked like they were trying to dodge it at first. And I was wondering if they were trying to save up and get like a third or something, 18 minutes, I guess even longer, 24 minutes in when that respawns. But it feels like they have the capability here of causing a lot of pushes and using these not necessarily for anything more than just a distraction, right? Similar to what you would use for an Oni minion wave, where it's a little stronger, it's gonna clear your wave a lot better than your minions are gonna clear it, and so you have to use that, whether it forces a fight like it could here in mid, or if it just forces a distraction and gives you an opportunity to go for an objective. It's still something I think that they have a fun amount of wiggle room to play with. The only sad part is they didn't get them both moving at once. And so the one in mid's already almost dead, and the one in left is just now moving.
And we've seen a lot of different strategies revolving around these trebuchets. The SCC teams really like to keep them up until they wanted to do an objective, for example. Then send the left one down while you're doing the Fire Giant, the right one while you're doing Gold Fury, etc. Other teams have just liked to send them as they come and use them for that pressure. There's a whole bunch of different strategies. I do agree with you. I feel like if the Jade Dragons were going to send out both of them, they should have sent them at the same time. But one way or another, they have still gotten something from it. hi-rez is getting highly pressured here in the mid lane, already forced to use the beads. Under the tower they go, and already Haddix taking a lot of damage. The portals may have been able to save him if Haddix were able to double back, but no such luck. A 1-for-1 trade in the mid lane.
And that's going to be, I mean, what could have been, like you said, a good disengage, stripped away, a good kill, I think, specifically to get onto PandaCat. Now they might find one on the Jade.
He's got a Riptide there, but it's facing the wrong direction, and he's going to be picked up. Venenu able to find himself a way out. Barracuda already uses the beads, but a little bit too early. Gets picked up. Sam, good patience on the Fenrir roll.
And that's just so good from Sam. I mean, it is so difficult, if you've ever played Fenrir, to not just chomp down on somebody. And what's even harder is in moments like that, they're not going to hit their beads early. Barra hits them just too early before the bite even comes through, whether it was a feint from Sam or what have you. And now it makes it a lot easier. You pick them up, you get the kill. It's an FG on the line.
And, well, yeah, it's going to be basically free here. Lazarus holding around the corner. He comes in, kills Sam for soccer. At the moment, it's not even about the Fire Giant. He's just looking to get the Jade Dragons off of it. And in that task score, he has succeeded. Venenu is here too. Venenu. And that's just going to buy the Jade Dragons a little bit of time. Whether or not it's going to be enough to keep the Dragons from taking it, I don't think so. But it's the small wins.
I mean, and at this point, look at it. PandaCat's half health. PandaCat's almost dead.
They re-engage. PandaCat already just used his double dash to go in. He's going to get stunned out. Here's Haddix to claim the kill. Awesome. Jake actually steals it away from him. Venenu in a bad spot, and the Typhoon's going to claim that one. A little bit over-aggressive from the Olympus bolts. Not quite. I don't think they quite respected the Fire Giant enough there. I think they could have gone.
Yeah.
They got PandaCat. They got Sam. That should have been the disengage for me.
That's such a weird fight to talk about, because there's so many things that go on and go right and so many things that go wrong for them. The good news is you've got a double hunter if you're the Dragons, which means one of them still has Fire Giant, and that's going to be fine. Okay, so along with Mike, they should still be able to push down towers, no problem. Not as strong as if PandaCat was A, alive, and B, still had it, but still able to get a lot. But you can see, I think, the disconnect. There's a lot of damage from Pagon, from Fine, from PandaCat. And right now, it's kind of Lazarus. I mean, he's getting a lot of the kills. Vin sets up a lot of damage there. Haddix is able to come in and with a big rotation, get a lot of that damage out there. But it is sloppy, is the way I would describe it from the bolts. I mean, it's like throwing just one by one anybody they can. They get 2 kills out of it. They still lose the FG, and I think some of them died twice. I think at least Jake did, if you extend the engagement from when it started to the very end. And so it's not the best way in, but it might have been their best bet at that moment with this amount of gold separating them to just strip something away from the Dragons and slow them down.
Well, I'm not sure that Lazarus realized, but I think with the amount of sand clones that he had there, instead of killing Sam, he might have been able to steal it. Yeah, he could have definitely made a play for the Fire Giant at the very least, whether or not that would have been the play or... Because, like, in reality, he did exactly what he was planning on doing. He kills Sam, forces the Jade Dragons to come off of the Fire Giant.
Yeah.
And it's just unfortunate for the Bolts that they weren't able to regroup up in time and take advantage of that. But Lasbra did exactly what he set out to do, and that was distract Jade Dragons for long enough to just delay the FG.
He made the play that he wanted to make. And like you said, it's just the question of, like,
Could
would
he
the
have made
other
a better
one
one?
have maybe been a little bit stronger? I think that at this point, you've got to deal with it the old-fashioned way, right? You've got to deal with the fact that you've got a team group as 5 on the right-hand side. They're knocking down your towers. And with just the Fire Giant, again, if it was like just a mage that had it or just an assassin that had it and your support, it's maybe not the end of the world for you. You can slow it down, no problem. Having it still on Fine-OK, having that second hunter here makes it so that sieging Phoenix is maybe still a little difficult 23 minutes in, but that knocking down these tier 2s is a lot more simple for them. It is a very easy task, and it continues to further the lead that the Dragons have. And at this point, I mean, you're looking at Serrated Edge getting picked up by Pagon, so he's going to be hitting even harder, along with the Hydras that he's picked up since then. Very similar build to what the Fenrir has. Both have some lifesteal, both have some sustain, both have a lot of damage. It just comes down to that slight early game, I guess, change up from the two to make the Assassins work. And otherwise, you've got massive crits that are ready from Pagon, and he's the only one who's built it, so that Spectral's only effective against him. The other side, you've got this, kind of hybrid-esque build from Fine-OK that's just gonna hit hard.
Yeah.
And so if you're building, your Spectral, your Breastplate, like if you're Haddix, or you've got the Sovereignty, the Emperor's down there if you're Jake, it's easier for Fine-OK to kill the tankier targets, Panda Cat to kill the squishy targets, and they get to trade off in a beautiful, I guess, what, Ferris wheel? No, that's not the word. What is
like
it? Seesaw.
It's like a Pokemon matchup.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got your old fire, water, grass.
Yeah, that's way
combination.
better than what I said. I
Yeah,
like that.
a seesaw. But I mean, we're seeing Fino going even further to enable that anti-tank kind of build. He's looking at what I'm going to assume to be a Heartseeker. I'm going to assume Pagon's doing the same thing here, both of them picking up the charged Morningstar. Not really too much else that could be building into at that point, but that's going to give them so much extra damage, especially considering the extra HP changes that have been implemented, and obviously being a central part of basically any of these damage-based builds in 9.5, these HP percentage-based items.
And that's, again, like you said, it's just going to let them hit harder, right? I think at this point...
You just do more damage.
Yeah, I was going to say, not just for
for
trying to burn down, I think, these Phoenixes, which is going to be a huge objective. But Fire Giants, tanks, anybody who steps up, I think it's going to be immensely better for the Dragons here. And this is where things get, like, a little awkward. In a 5-on-5 on even ground, I think the Bolts have an advantage because they have a slightly more standard draft in their favor. In a 5-on-5
in the jungle,
where the Dragons are playing the comp they are with the lead they have, a lot of it depends on how well you can stop Pagon and Sam's initiation, because both of them, plus Mike, are going to be able to control whether it's knockups, whether it's a Fenrir ult or a life of the party. They're going to get your beads, they're going to pull someone in, and someone will die at the beginning. If you can avoid that pick from the Bolts, then you can probably take the Fire Giant fight. Otherwise, you've got to play this way more carefully.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, on the flip side, Gore, the Dragons really need to be paying attention for Lasbra here. He's got the Protector of the Jungle online. Yep. He's got, a lot of damage in way of Transcendence, and the Silver Branch and the Brawlers as well, going to be stopping out some of that healing. The Jade Dragons, not too worried about that. But now, Fire Giant already falling low. Below a third, but that Scream from Haddix is going to keep the Dragons away from it for now. Sam even disengaging fully. Now Polar Bear Mike taking a fair amount of damage. That's going to be the stun. The River's Rebuke comes through and up onto the coffin. Goes PBM. Pagon looking to knock up 2, and now he's caught out in the back.
And this is exactly what they need. If you can find this kill, it strips away opportunities from the Dragons.
Pagon looking very, very low, able to dash away for now. But Haddix coming through. Pagon has to use that blink, and Haddix should be able to pick this one up pretty free. Back in the main body of the fight, though, Lasbra able to pick up Sam for Socket. Sorry, not even on the main body. That's on the left-hand side. A truly split engagement, but now Haddix has been able to leverage his position for the fight, but he's all alone. The rest of his team not able to follow up just yet.
This is going to be a difficult decision. They're so low, but there's 3 people still alive. I think if you're the Bolts here, Fire Giant's an easy pull. You either force a fight from the Dragons, or you end up pushing things, a little further. You get the FG, but like you said, left lane.
Trebuchet's
Trebuchet?
there's nothing to scoff at. That thing will kill a Phoenix if not dealt with.
And no one's looking at it. Look, Vin's portaling over. They are committing to this. So it's going to be a lost left Phoenix, or at least it should be a lost left Phoenix. It's just whether or not they can get an FG for their troubles.
Just look at the amount of wave is here, and look at the amount of damage the Trebuchet is doing per shot. There is a non-zero chance that the wave kills the Trebuchet in time, but there is another wave on the left-hand side. But meanwhile, in the fight, Jake Fido-K gets eviscerated. Goodbye, Mr. B, trying to get into the wall. Pandacat, well, he thinks he's safe, but only Haddix knows the secrets of wall-based safety technology. And unfortunately, Pandacat is just an apprentice, not able to learn the secrets in time. Left Phoenix might just survive this one, Gore, and the Fire Giant goes the way of the bolts.
Those minions are doing the best they can
do
right
no
now.
damage.
They're putting all that they can into this. And it just needs a couple more shots.
Just about.
And it could have done it, but no, they do manage to be off a little better for their troubles. So the Phoenix lives.
Yep, just about.
It's weak as hell, but it's alive. And the Fire Giant's on the side of the bolts. Problem at this point, Blazy.
Yep.
There's 5 towers still standing on the other side. We'll
a big
call
problem.
that left tier 1 might as well be dead. But there's then 4 towers.
That's still a lot of
that are
towers.
still alive. So the Titan is incredibly healthy. You can't just knock down 2 of these towers, go through a Phoenix, and find the end without it costing a lot in the process. But at the same time,
it's a start.
Just 3 minutes now left on the FG buff, having this power play only get towers feels like you're just keeping it open for the Dragons to win the next fight.
Well, it's one of those situations, right? And I know Mifflin likes to talk about it, but you got the 3 Fire Giant cycle of the best you want to do, the minimum best you want to do with each Fire Giant. First Fire Giant, get all the towers off the board. Second one, you're looking at Phoenixes. Third one, you're looking to end the game, right? Here, if the Olympus Bolts are able to take off, if they're able to win, they're able to take away all of these towers. That is still, yeah, that's a huge win for them within the game. Not another win of the game.
No.
But you're getting a lot of gold from that. You're putting a lot of pressure on the map as well. You're evening out the objective kind of leveragement that the Jade Dragons have. They can't just have all of this map control now, because the Bolts have been able to claw some of this back. Obviously, the right tier 2 is still standing, but if we look at the amount of gold that they've been able to get out of that, it's really brought back this graph to basically net even at this point. 3,000 gold is not a big difference 30 minutes into the game.
And I mean, going off what you said, I think it's an ancient proverb that said one big dub is made of a bunch of smaller dubs.
That's ancient proverb.
Yeah, an ancient proverb.
Egypt, I think.
Yeah, I'm glad. See, look, at least someone finally is well-read enough to get these references. So you get a small win here. You might even get a left side Phoenix and maybe some kills.
Potentially. Awesome Jake pulled away from the rest of his team, and he's too deep in, but he's going to sacrifice his life for the Phoenix. But now, Jade Dragon surging forward. They want more in this engagement. Barracuda taking a lot of damage. Pandacat looking to trade that one out, and he's going to fall down. Lasbro nearly just about makes it out with a pixel worth of HP, but he's got Pig on, sniffing him down. This is a character that is going to be able to chase down basically anyone, able to find him here, but Lasbro, I don't know, does he have a lot of lifesteal? He doesn't have any lifesteal in this build, but it looks like he's out to me.
This is the test of cooldowns. And maybe a little bit of
patience.
Test your metal, right? It is Pagon willing to dive that deep to continue that chase. The answer is no. He falls away. If that blink was available, maybe we see something a little bit more. Probably a kill onto Lasbro there. They lose the Phoenix, lose a lot of towers, get a couple of kills, might be able to with this Phoenix slightly weakened, retaliate, but with no minions, I mean, this thing's going to hit hard in return.
Awesome Jake does have another couple seconds before we can join the fight, and there's a lot of space that the Jade Dragons can use here. And they're going to take that Phoenix and walk away. Sam might pay with his life. And beautiful Riptide, of course, from Awesome Jake. And then the auto attack to steal it away for himself. Wonderful. He deserves it, but look at that. 2 people hit by the through space and time. PBM and Pandacat taking low, but this Typhoon not quite on the mark just yet. Charging forward are the Olympus Bolts. They're looking to try and get a few more picks, but look at the positioning from Pagon. He's hovering behind, seeing if he can find this flank. Pandacat taking the brunt of the damage already. Awesome Jake getting chunked in, but it's going to be Pagon from behind, finding one. Awesome Jake takes the return, but Lasbro has found one of his own, and look at him going crazy. Kingslayer not able to find too much more, but Haddix gets one of his own. And it's just, it's tennis. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. Barracuda is about to hit the floor.
Is he?
I guess not.
Is
Never mind. Volleyball Mike. Kill him. Not able to find the kill. Barracuda dodges out the little puddle there. Pagon. Surely when Pagon walks around the corner, he's able to kill Barracuda here. Surely. But the jet stream hits the wall right in front of him, and now I'm not sure Pagon has the chase potential.
Now, 15 seconds left on the blink. This might be a chase worthwhile. You've got fire minions you're going to have to deal with, and that might put him in combat. We have to pay I think, close attention to this. I can't believe Barra. I guess it's twofold. I can't believe Pagon or Mike or Barra lived through that. Like, one of the three had to die, right? At some point, finally, someone goes down. Vin's about to respawn, so you get a deicide for all of 2 seconds.
Big stagger.
And the only reason I'm okay with that, in most instances, I'd be complaining because it's like, dude, why'd you waste so much time? What are you gonna? You got 2 people. What are you gonna do on the map? Like Pagon clears red buff. Who cares? That's fun. I like that they chase it down. They get themselves the kill. And then instead you put yourself at a wash, right? Pretty much everybody dies. You can just kind of reset and think about Fire Giants coming up, Pyromancer's up. No Fury on the left-hand side. You've got 1 tower still standing, but 2 left side Phoenixes down. So Fire Minions are clashing and colliding with each other and should theoretically stay at around a neutral spot. So shouldn't put a heat under the bolts to have to back and deal with that, and should not give the Dragons such an advantage that they can just overwhelm this FG. We did get to see, I think the most interesting part to me, the fight, how squishy the Dragons are, by how much damage there is. They die really fast, but they'll kill you alongside them.
It really is a moment of, if you can't kill them fast enough, they will just kill you instead. Haddix is able to make it into the wall. Sampa Soccer picks up Venenu in the back. Looking to find the damage onto the Fenrir. Up in the top though, fine, okay, finds one. Venenu is going to get finished down by Pagon. Finally answering that age-old question, but the 2 assassins in the top line. Panda Cat falls down as well. Haddix could potentially be in some trouble here. Takes a couple tower shots, but he's going to be able to get into that wall soon, so he's going to be just fine. Sam, in fact, nearly takes a fall, but the Phoenix has respawned, and now the Jade Dragons have a little bit of a power play on the left-hand side. A lot of damage comes through onto Haddix, but not enough to close out the life of the solo laner. But now, Wash.
Wash, slight advantage bolts, I think. Look, you get a lot of relics. I think Lasbra missing out on his means the next fight he's not going to be as aggressive, or if he is as aggressive, he's not getting out with his life. And so that's a big win for you. Haddix is missing most of his relics as well, and so you're missing just 1 from Pagon, 2 from Sam on the other side, so a slight relic advantage in favor of the Dragons. Ultimates are going to be back by that point, so it doesn't necessarily matter there. And ordinarily, I'd say the Phoenix advantage should go to the Dragons. They've got an extra wave of Fire Minions more than the Bolts do. And so that might get some good damage. Might even be able to take that Phoenix down and put pressure onto the Bolts. But all of this pretty much comes out to even. It's just the numbers game, and it's just the Fire Giant.
And Fire Giant is, in fact, the name of the game right now. 50% on the objective. Barracuda still chipping it down. Not a lot of secure. Typhoon comes through, and awesome Jake. I think he's going to pay for this one with his life. Pagon able to claim credit for that, but he's separated from the rest of his team by a wall. Gonna dash into it, and Pagon's gonna get out just fine, but now the chase is on for the Jade Dragons.
And now they can look for more kills. I mean, Barra half health already. Mike leading the way. All he needs is some good CC, or they can turn back and pull the FG. Either way, they've got the numbers advantage, and now that Phoenix is getting destroyed by the Fire Minions, so they've got the map advantage working for them too.
Phoenix is down. There are going to be no counter waves coming through from the Olympus bolts. They have to find a win here. Up into the wall goes Haddix, not able to steal it away with the scream. Venenu getting pressured out by Pagon over here on the right-hand side. Looking to try and find the damage turnaround, but Panda Cat flies in from the sky, and Venenu surely falls down, but the portal will find him safe for now.
Just 1 hit the bees, finally enough to do it. Barra goes down as well. A minute without the carries. It's Lasbra, it's Haddix, and depending on how long this Phoenix takes, it's going to be Jake as well for the defense.
Could be the game here. Gore, only 2 people left standing, as you mentioned. Jake able to respawn in about 5 seconds with the Jade Dragons. Look like they potentially want to just push in. That left Phoenix is already gone. Haddix sitting right here, looking to find some damage. This is a big choke point. Jake gonna get pulled in again. Typhoon dropped down as well. The line of ghosts is not gonna be able to do enough damage, and now Haddix getting chomped down on. Down he falls, and game number 1 should fall squarely in the hands of the Jade Dragons.
Just as many kills as there are minutes towards the end of the bloodbath in the last half of that game. But I have to say, the Dragons, like a good win for them. I think very good controlling and dominant with what their comp was able to do. almost gifted, though. I feel like there was that separation. Yeah. Jake isolated. Once they killed him off, that fight became so much easier. The Fire Giant was such a simple equation. You don't have to worry about the Phoenix anymore. You don't have to think about the left-hand side of the map. It's just cool. We've got a 5v4. We can run it down. That's what this comp does best.
Yeah.
And their tank, their healer, it's all gone. If Jake lives through that engagement, and if he's alive a little longer, probably still dancing around the FG, honestly, or maybe we see the bolts running it down the other way. It becomes a coin flip. But just that one pick, just one misstep too far forward, and the Dragons take full control.
I think they just got it down a little bit too low. There's like a point of no return with the Fire Giant, right? I think it's about, what, a sixth of its HP?
Yeah.
You got to either commit or you got to get off.
Yeah.
And they got it down that low. They didn't quite want to commit to it. And it did ultimately end up costing them game number 1. But this is not a best of 1. This is, in fact, a best of 3. And we're going to have to see if the Jade Dragons are going to be able to close it out in 2 after this.
But he had the horsey, and horsey, don't you stop! Fido king, Fido!
I gave up dabbing for Lynn.
Cool. No more dabbing for Final. He looked at me and said, I'm going to be on that stage next year. I'm going to become a world champion.
Ripping through! Titan down, ball 3! A double kill myself!
Well, a long-winded game one goes over to the Jade Dragons. They find their win up against the Olympus Bolts in this first game in the best of three. Back and forth for quite some time, but pretty much for the entirety, Ro, it felt like the Dragons had at least the gold lead, a decent bit of control. Olympus Bolts were able to find some avenues back in, but when it does come down to the end of it, Jade Dragons did have the damage to close this one out.
They did. In a way, they were kind of controlling the game. They're always setting the pace for the game, but Bolts did a great job at reacting and kind of staying in it because, again, they didn't have the pressure in the early game. You know, there's an AMC in the solo lane, for example, and they had pressure in the duo lane. Jade Dragons did. So Bolts did a great job of reacting. Lasbro got off to a great start and getting those early kills, but the rotations from Pandacat, something that's really hard to keep up with, especially, you know, the pressure from Pagon coming out of mid. He's able to rotate over quickly and get a gank, and then, you know, Pandacat able to capitalize very easily on that one. But as we see, Pandacat is at his own Phoenix. This was a back and forth game. So, you know, Bolts pushing the issue there. I think Jake not having beads might have caused some issues on these sieges and at these fire giants. Jake getting pulled in by the Phoenix there. They're able to get the Phoenix off it. They're able to kill the Phoenix off of his death, but then, you know, they trade a Phoenix for a return and we're back to fire giant dancing.
I mean, it really did feel like both these teams, while there is some good team fight synergy with the Bolts, with some of the ults they could throw out, it really did feel like it was two pick comps kind of going up against each other and kind of highlighting some of the combo potential that you were mentioning on the pregame, whether it be, you know, Pagon pulls somebody in so that way Sam can grab them, or pulling somebody in that way PBM can continuously grabbing them. It felt like these little individual picks in these matchups were always favoring the Dragons.
Yeah, two very different drafts, yet remarkably similar styles despite the different gods. We've got a Hunter in solo lane and an Assassin in solo lane, yet still they play very similarly. We've got like an Assassin in mid lane dashing around, but we've got a mage in mid lane portaling through. So it's very similar comps, even though you get very different gods, and it ends up being just a very scrappy game overall.
Yeah, Scrappy has really become the name of the game for the Jade Dragons over everything, and that's really where they've kind of thrown other teams for a loop in their matchups throughout the regular season, even through that seeding tournament, was they're just going to play, they're just going to fight, and you're just going to have to answer to it.
That's the thing. A big part of the mentality is that they just believe they are better. So that helps when you're getting into these scrappy team fights and you get Pagon and Sanford Soccer rotating and flanking and Polar Bear Mike being willing to pull in any target into his backline. It's that confidence that helps them take this team fight with a very, you know, unorthodox team comp. But this is the meta that they believe in, it seems. So we didn't see as much as, you know, the auto attack damage that we saw in the first game, but still a similar amount of objective DPS because you have, you know, I guess on the Bolt side, you have, you know, Cleaner doing a good amount of objective DPS. You have two Hunters on the side of Jade Dragons. You have a lot of setup out of the Fenrir, and the Baron, and then obviously you have the Susanna always willing to flank. So I think, you know, if they want to play these similar team comps, that's fun for me. We get these essentially, you know, statistically the top two teams in the league right now, and they just battle it out and get super scrappy. That's just a fun time to watch.
I just noticed the picture of Barracuda on the chair with the little Prime Gaming crown on top. That's something I just noticed there. But picks and bans for game number 2 ready to go. And I want to touch on a point that you brought up in your last little analysis there, which was that PBM was willing to pull anybody to that backline. And that's something that we see so many times between Fenrirs and Barons and those kinds of gods that grab a single person to throw to the team. Is so often, so many players are so picky and choosy. Like, I don't want to grab the support. I don't want to grab the solo laner. But these guys were just willing to grab anybody that they could get their hands on because they knew that they had that follow-up to close out.
A key to success with that kind of strategy is just to do it as often as possible. Be repetitive, because every time you're doing it, you're getting some kind of value out of it, unless you really mess up. So you're getting beads, you're getting some kind of CCU mid ult, but you're always getting value, and that gives your next ultimate, or your next, you know, if it's Baron, yeah, sure, your next ultimate, or Fenrir, your next ultimate, it gives it a higher chance to be more valuable. And Jade Dragons, again, I mean, it worked, right? They just go straight back to it. The Chernobog, the Baron's still available for them, however.
Yeah, the Baron kind of being the big one that the Olympus Bolts have to maybe answer to. Do they take that for themselves now, or do they risk the Jade Dragons picking it up? With the Emoji band away, the only new band that came from this phase, that does mean Khepri will be the next selection up for Awesome Jake. A bit of a different look, kind of away from the Nox, which is where he's been going a little bit more often towards, and then the Emoji when he gets the chance. So a little bit of a new one, and then you throw the Artemis out there as well.
Bolts have decided, you know what, if you're going to come to us, like with the Susanna, for example, then we're going to be ready to fight you in the backline. So Khepri already ready to protect any backline god, and they pick Artemis with that. Maybe, if not, by far and away the best teamfight hunter. So if they're dashing in with a Susanna again, for example, then they're going to have to struggle into that Artemis trap and Artemis ultimate, and then contest again with the Khepri ult. So I think Artemis is a smart pick if you were to counter what Jade Dragons did in the last draft. But now it's up to Jade Dragons. Do they go for that same style, or do they pivot now that Bolts have a very defensive backline?
Well, it will be at least a slight pivot towards the solo lane, and Final K not going to be grabbing a hunter for himself this time around. It'll be Kleena, and then Ymir now over potentially. I say potentially because I believe Sam was the one who played this god in the jungle previously for the Dragons. But maybe this Ymir over in the support role for Mike could be in the solo lane. We used to see that a long time way back in the day. But also still has that weird flexibility. The Jade Dragons, the name of their game is just, we're picking a god that can just go anywhere.
Yeah, I would give it a higher likelihood for actually Kleena to flex more than I would Ymir. I think Ymir will pretty likely to be into support, especially because it's very good into that dual lane, very good walls against a Khepri with a short dash, and Artemis generally in a mobile god. But Kleena could be, we've seen, who was it? It was Benny who played it in the mid lane. We saw Paul play it in the mid lane as well. So certainly, and I mean, Pagon's already playing Assassins in the mid lane, so that's a possibility. In fact, I might call it a 50-50 between mid lane and solo lane for the Kleena on the Jade Dragon side right now.
True. We have been seeing a little bit of that thanks to Benny Q kind of bringing that one over, and then Paul following suit. But as the bans come through, Amaterasu was the final pick for the Bolt, so a new look over in the solo lane for Haddix this time around. Fenrir, the first god ban for the Bolts. Morrigan, the ban for the Jade Dragons after seeing the performance that the Bolts had up against the Valkyries. Dragons not wanting to deal with that mid lane pick. Interesting
Draft from the Bolts as well. It's a very regimented and like structured draft where these gods have a very defined role. Amaterasu generally is an objective-based god. She will increase objective damage pretty heavily, and then has that pressure and fast rotations. Artemis, like I said before, are quite a defensive hunter in terms of she's an offensive hunter, but when they come close to her, that her offense becomes her defense. And then Khepri, obviously, a very defensive support as well. So very, a structured draft from them, not as scrappy as what we saw last game, whereas Jade Dragon still keeping it scrappy, that flex Kleena, the Ymir always hunting for the walls, and then Chernobog able to fly in.
And all three of the gods on the Bolt still going to struggle with that Ymir wall. So then the question comes, do the Bolts need to find a couple of either, find an assassin and maybe a mage for Ven that can deal with that wall, or maybe they just find something that can go right through that wall. Osiris going to be locked in for the Bolts, and now with Ama locked in, this Osiris most likely standing over towards Lasbro.
Yeah, I think Lasbro's got a great Osiris. I think a lot of players in the league can actually flex Osiris between jungle and solo right now. I think he fits well in both roles. So it's interesting to see, them pick the Osiris after the Amaterasu. I would have been, maybe would have rather to see that Osiris picked where the Amaterasu is, then flex it, and then they can, they give some strategy against Jade Dragon's draft there. But they want both warriors instead. We've seen a lot of talk about warriors being bad, but now we're seeing two of them on the same team comp, and then a Gilgamesh finally back in the meta. We haven't seen him yet this tournament, I don't think.
Can I make an extremely wild guess as where I think this Jade Dragon's draft is going?
I'm ready.
I think Panda Cat's the only one who's probably going to be playing a normal pick here. Well, no. I'm going to go, it's going to be Panda Cat on the Chernobog, Mike on the Baron, Kleena solo, Ymir jungle, Gilgamesh mid.
That is spicy. I would swap the last two and put the Kleena in the mid lane and the Gilgamesh in... Wait a minute.
Nah, because we've seen Pagon run the Gilgamesh mid before. We've seen Sam run the Ymir jungle. So that's what I'm saying. I'm thinking Kleena's going to go solo. That's going to be pretty normal. Chernobog Baron is a dual lane. I think that's normal. I think our spice that we're going to see is maybe Ymir jungle, Gilgamesh mid. I could be entirely wrong. You never know with the Dragons, and that's why it's so difficult to draft against them. And the Bolt's going with something a little bit safer in that instance, having now a Sanctified Field in the side of Olorun as their final pick.
Yeah, I imagine we're going to see a Gilgamesh solo, but we'll see about it regardless. I think either way, they have a pretty strong team fight. A Gilgamesh jumping into an Artemis and Olorun, as long as you have beads available, will always be pretty strong. But if Bolts get a little bit of space for themselves, a little bit of room to pull these objectives, look how much objective DPS they have on the side. If Osiris, Lasbro in this regard, goes the Sino build, as I would call it, and goes Executioner and stuff like that, and Amaterasu has maybe a Frenzy on her team comp as well, and increasing that objective DPS, then you have double crit out of Olorun and Artemis. Those objectives will melt fast, but Jade Dragon's follow-up will be quick. That Chernobog flying in, the Kleena flying, well, not flying in, dashing in, the Gilgamesh jumping over walls, and then Ymir creating walls of his own. It's not going to be easy to get space to pull these objectives, but if they do win a small team fight and get a chance, then we could see Bolts pull the trigger very quickly in this team fight.
I'm imagining that, not Spectral, Phantom Shell is probably going to be the name of the game, at least one of them on this, because as mentioned, the Osiris, he can walk through the wall, or he can jump over the wall with his ultimate. Right. Outside of that, nobody else can get past this wall. This Olorun is going to be in a little bit of fire when it comes to that instance. Now, when you're looking at the dual lane, Olorun traditionally used to go more towards that dual lane, Artemis more often there, but we have seen a couple of flips. We've seen Dardes take the Artemis mid. We've seen Paul run the Olorun mid. Do you have a preference on which of those two road that goes over towards that mid spot?
I think Artemis is a little too slow in mid. I'd prefer to see the Olorun. It has a little bit better wave clear and also just better itemized for mid as well. Artemis needs to get those stacks online before she gets stronger, and I think she's going to struggle in the early game as she goes mid. So I would prefer to see the Olorun. And speaking of the Ymir walls, it's an interesting team comp from the Bolts as well, because both Artemis and Olorun that we're speaking about have a very, ready to turn on you playstyle. If you engage on them, they're just going to fight back as their offense, or as their defense, I should say. So maybe they don't need the shell. Maybe if they get walled off, they say to the Ymir, I'm not stuck here with you, you're stuck here with me, and that kind of playstyle, and try to fight back. Especially, they can be confident as well. They have a Kepri ult to rely on too.
Kind of a turn and burn style maybe for the Olympus Bolts. We'll see if they can turn it around in game number 2 and move us on, or the Jade Dragon's gonna clean sweep it. Let's jump right in and find out.
And that is all it's going to take indeed. Thank you, J-Mac. The Jade Dragons sitting 1 win away from their secured spot into that last bracket of the tournament. Smite Masters might be looking at their first secured final bracket-ist. Really ran away from me at the end there.
Yeah, if the Dragons can move forward, I believe a win here puts you against the Titans. And then winning later today puts you against the Kings. So once again, consolation prizes. It's not that great to get either. But I guess the Titans, because of the length of the day yesterday, might be the easier team for you to try and tackle down here. So the Dragons being able to win that. And then it's just a few short steps to the finals. But you got to get there first, Blazy, and that's always the hard part. The Bolts are not a team that are going to make things easy for you. The Osiris here in the jungle, we can tackle what the Dragons have done in a little bit, but like the Osiris jungle, something that in my mind used to be and still should be able to get hands on. Very interesting though, considering the discourse that we've been hearing so much about Warriors, and that there's 2 of them now for the Bolts. I think is interesting for them, and whether or not it will work out, right? If that difference in scaling, the fact that maybe they don't feel like they do enough damage, or maybe they're not tanky enough, that weird middle ground that Warriors always send to fall in when they're not like the top of the meta. This is going to be the question for Lasber, is whether or not this Osiris can be the powerhouse that we saw throughout last year, or if it's going to fall flat on its face.
Well, he's going for the mannequins already, which this is an item we just have not seen, I don't think, this week so far. Really,
yeah, it's been devoid.
Yeah, it really much in favor of the Bumper's Hammer, or even the Eye of the Jungle favored for these more auto-attack based characters. But I'm really interested to see what Lasber's going to be able to do with this. The other interesting pickup I want to point out here is the Amaterasu, something that was so heavily prioritized in that first week with the SCC boys. This is a character that was, I want to say, top 3 ban every single game.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. And it's just such a powerful pickup. The Amaterasu really works well with this objective-based playstyle that the Bolt's composition is going to be so good at.
And I have to give Ama a lot of credit. I think Scary D comes to my mind, just like some of the plays you can see from an Amaterasu, which you can go back and see Season 7 finals and just Worlds in general. Those kinds of plays win games. And so Amaterasu has that capability all through. Maybe a little less damage right now, won't be able to find as many kills on their own, but the separation that you can create, the space that you can create, plus the setup that exists with that ultimate is game-changing in the right circumstances, and I think that they've got enough targets on the Dragons that can get caught out by that it could end up being the absolute game changer for them later on, is Haddix's rotations and that presence. The thing that's, I think, most interesting is how they're going to try and tackle this, because you've got the Ymir, you've got a lot of control that could just block that Amaterasu. So Haddix is going to have a high execution threshold, I think, to make things work.
Absolutely, for sure. But it also it harkens back to the similar kind of thing you wanted to see from the Giannis. That speed buff can give you. Obviously, it's not the same as taking a portal and walking through the walls, but you get a fair amount. I want to say it scales up to 24% movement speed at
you get a lot.
top level. It's a huge buff. And that really can just be so instrumental in chasing down a team, disengaging from a team, rotating to a different lane. There's a lot of utility that can come from this solo laner, which I think it's wild that Amaterasu isn't permanently in meta. And yeah, there is 21.
Yeah.
So not quite 24.
Not
but
quite
still.
24. Still a really big number, though. 21% movement speed is nice. And plus, you're getting a little bit of healing for that. Like, you've got a lot of self-sustain. I like Ama, and I think that, again, almost always falls down not to the god themselves, but the player. Haddix, I know, can do a good job, so it's really just how well does it fit with the rest of the team. And that's where, like, I look towards Lasber once again. Jungle impact has been a huge portion of this, but Vin is on someone who's a heavy-hitting auto-attacker that gets better over time. Barracuda's on a heavy-hitting auto-attacker that gets better over time.
Yep.
And then you've got Jake on the Skepri. So survivability and I think capability in teamfights for the Bolts is going to exist. It's just whether or not it all synergizes the way they would like. And Lasber has my eyes just because we see the golden bow, or the golden blade. Golden bow is an item that's going to give people nightmares. Golden blade over there for the Amaterasu. I imagine, here for the Osiris. That plus the mannequins plus his attack chain, like, he's going to clear jungle camps really well. And when it's not jungle camps, he's going to beat gods down. I mean, it is going to be a very hard-hitting chain for a lot of this. And appropriately weaved with abilities, I think Lasber is actually in a really deadly portion of the game already.
Golden Bow, for those uninitiated, is an item back from Season 3 that made Mercury look somehow scarier than he has
Yeah,
in this
imagine
tournament.
being able to buy an item immediately and rock crits on your one.
It was Golden Blade if Silver Branch. That's literally the best way to describe Golden Bow is Golden Blade and Silver Branch in the same item. Kind of spooky.
I'm happy that they're separated.
Yeah.
I'm happy that, you know what, thinking back on it.
And and also Hunters could buy it. That I think was the scariest part of it.
What your game was all the time, if you loaded in, you knew what your first item was. It was pretty easy. And it was guaranteed Golden Bow.
But
I'm glad it's gone.
Yeah, no, I'm totally glad it's gone too, especially the Hunters. Anyway, we'll move away from I could spiral on Golden Bow for an hour, but I want to talk about Venenu here, specifically on the Olaran now.
Yeah.
We've been talking a lot about physical ADCs, the Hunters specifically being really, really good with the items in the game right now. I want to ask you if that applies, in your opinion, to these magical ADCs, because the ring tree has not been looked at very kindly recently.
Yeah, so it's this weird balance. Right now, most hunters are good because the physical items they're buying feel great, and you're getting a lot of gold for it. I think that's where this Olaran kind of falls in. You get the same starter item, you get a lot of that gold early on, a lot of procs that you're going to be getting because of how long it takes to clear the minion waves. You might have to hold that thought.
In a lot of danger. Has to go into the ice shot, but here's the ultimate coming through from Venenu. Trying to find a little bit of extra damage, but Lasber already forced to jump away. Haddix in some trouble, kicked against the wall, but I think that was the beads are going to save the life of the solo laner for now. A lot of damage coming through from both teams, but 6 minutes in, not enough to kill.
And I like the presence of mind, and also the retaliation. The fact that you've got enough CC immunity on the side of the Dragons to somewhat deal with a Sanctified Fields. It's not the same as, your Kamazots just walking through it or your Cthulhu's literally just ignoring it while they're in their ult. But it is something that I think the Dragons are going to have to rely on pretty heavily. It's that or beads whenever that comes up if you want to get out. And so I think the Bolts, one, great asset in their side, but two, something that the Dragons are cleverly dealing with, at least in that instance. We'll see if it continues. And that brings it back to Vin, right? Not only is Sanctified Fields really good, but typically what we've been seeing, like you said, the rings haven't necessarily gotten a huge buff. And so it was cool. Olaran just happens to work really well right now. I think he hits hard. Otherwise, we'd be seeing a lot more Souls. We'd see more Cronoses, things like that if it was the build.
Sure.
And so I think that he, as himself, as a team fighter, because of his ult, and how hard, like, the magical crit can come through, all that, it makes it a little more bearable, I guess, to play. Like, you can bring him in. He's not as good as another hunter, but he is still going to bring a lot, and because it's magical damage, it helps diversify your team.
Yeah, the time dilation definitely a big part of that.
That's
PBM in a lot of trouble. Barracuda, the immunity that Jake was just able to put on Barracuda to cleanse away the kick from Sam. What an absolute god of timing. Awesome Jake coming in to hug Sam for soccer, trying to pull him back in, but the leap's going to find him and Panda Cat safe. But now Burst Blood, though, square in the side of Olympus Bolts, and Pagon running away. I think it'll be just fine.
And this is exactly what I want to see. I like that Lasber's getting hands-on, but it's not just Lasber. I mean, the entire team on the Bolts are trying to push forward and they're taking advantage of the fact that they've got this Osiris that scales maybe a little better than the Gilgamesh, who we haven't seen for a while, and depending on how this game goes, we might not see again for a little while. And I think a lot of it is just the specific pressure that this Osiris can bring, and the chase down that he has onto someone like Ymir. I mean, I don't know if this is going to be a kill, but it's still going to be big.
I think with the Sanctified Field, it very much could be. Polar Bear Mike, no place to go. Stuck in the Sanctified Field, pulled back, and that's a second kill there for the Olympus Bolts. We could even go ahead and take a look at that first blood again, Gore.
Yeah, and honestly, I want to see it because specifically from Bera's perspective, because like you said, brilliant on Jake to keep them where he needs to be in time so that not only is he not in danger, but is able to get that. So you have the Tusky that comes out for some CC immunity.
Yeah.
You've got, then at that point, a Scarab's Blessing plus the movement speed. You're feeling really confident in that fight if you're Barracuda.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. See, that's what I missed. I missed Tusky coming out. What I thought had happened is that Sam had begun kicking Barra, and while he was still in the process of getting pushed back, the cleanse from the Scarab's Blessing had stopped that interaction from happening. But I was mistaken. Barracuda was never kicked, but still really good.
We'll just
safety
pretend
net
it was a
from-
really long CC immunity.
Yeah, thank you. It was just one really long.
Like it happened,
CCI.
but like I think that's what he was going for because there's no other reason to ult him there, right?
Well, it's the safety, right? Like Barra's in, for all
He
intents
is
and
an
purposes, a bad
Ama,
situation.
yeah.
there.
He's an Artemis surrounded by 4 people.
Yeah.
That doesn't typically end well. You've got a good point.
Yeah, so like surely the ultimate there from Jake is just a, hey, I know that you're gonna do great and kill some people here. I'm just gonna put this on you now, and either you're able to get away or you can get revived. No revive for Venenu though, as he's gonna fall down here in the mid lane. Sam for soccer drops down the winds of
good kill.
Shamash. Panic Cat jumping in there.
That's wild.
That is a incredible ult
Wow.
from Panic Cat. The decision making there, I'm not sure is 100% on the mark, but charging forward, the Olympus Bolt's still looking for more.
And at this point, go
Mike.
for it, right? You got to stun good body blocks. Yeah, that's going to be an easy kill for him.
It's the Ymir tax.
I mean, I'm all over the place. I don't know where to focus on. Haddix with a really good rotation.
Panda with a boggling ult.
Yeah, you lost Vin, but yeah, no, it's Panda that broke me because he ults in, and
It's a good way
it
to
feels
describe
like
it.
the team probably wants to fight. And then he beads and runs away, and the team's just kind of left in this weird, didn't engage, but didn't quite disengage area. It gives them a pretty free kill, forces everyone else to fall back, and opens up a Fury for the Bolts. I mean, that one, I don't even think that one comes down to, like, draft or anything. That was just a weird execution from the Dragon.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the Pyromancer being contested here. Jake stole it away with the 2! No shot!
That's
Jake stole that
painful.
away with the Rolling Sun. The take damage, able to secure the Pyromancer.
That hurts.
In favor of the. That is maybe the most painful experience. What is that? A 15 damage tick?
Yeah, it doesn't. It does so little that most of the time you can ignore it. Like it's what you're using
Crazy.
Kepri 2 for most of the time is the way it impacts your team and the way it impacts the enemy. You are not using it for any of the damage. Even honestly, even the root doesn't do that much. And so I mean, shout-outs to Jake. Look, pretty much everything that could go wrong right now for the Dragons feels like it has been.
Yeah, and Lasbra's off to a test, still looking to find
Oh,
more.
man.
Panda Cat falls down, has the ult to get away, and see that's the benefit of having the towers here. But Gore, I wanna look at this. I wanna see if it was in fact the 2, and it has to be, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
it is, because it comes through before the root comes around.
That's wild.
Buck wild. Jake. I mean, I can't even say that was well timed from Jake. That was just lucky.
No, yeah, like again, it's just whatever the Dragons did. I don't know what deities they have upset, but like the coin flips just are not going in their favor.
Barracuda getting pressured out here by Sam for Soccer. Panda Cat once again coming through. It was a nice side dodge there to dodge out the ability from Chernobog, but unfortunately dodges straight into the winds of Shamash. So a little bit of a return kill here from the Jade Dragons. They're able to bring a little of it back, but Gore, this is still I want to say that is a 3 and a bit thousand gold lead at the moment in favor of the Olympus Bolts.
Yeah, so being able to hover this far ahead, the Fury already helped you immensely, but you've been able to really push down a lot of waves, controlling a lot of the neutral camp. You get the Pyromancer as well. despite not having any control of it. Plus, I mean, at this point, like, it's even worth mentioning, like, Q-Diff, they've got 7 versus the 2 on the other side. So a lot of neutral gold that has just been flowing into the pockets of the Bolts. And it just feels almost uncharacteristic for the Dragons, where so many moments that typically are level-headed and clean played are just slightly askew or mistimed, whatever you want to highlight it as. And so will it persist? The problem is I think that the Bolts have a draft that translates really well into the late game. I do still think the same for the Dragons, although having the Olarun and having the Artemis, I think, is a little bit more of a distinct power advantage that you're going to have in terms of pushing down neutral objectives, your Fire Giants, your Gold Furies, but then eventually towers as well. Whereas for the Dragons, team fights, theoretically, in the middle of the jungle, will have some good advantage for them. Pagon's on a great pick in the Kleena. Gilgamesh is perfect for setup. And then between Fino-K and Mike, you really do have a lot to pull people back in. Yeah. But the damage at that point, it falls very heavily onto Pandacat and Pagon to make sure it works perfectly. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot easier for the Bolts to find a pick, and from that point forward, strip away the Dragon's potential to win a fight.
I think the best way to characterize it, Gory, is both of these comps are really good at controlling space.
Yes.
Right? Olympus Bolts, you got Haddox's ult, Sanctified Field especially, and
So
Tusky
good.
as well. And then on the other side, actually, we might need to come back to this, is once again, Polar Bear Mike is in some trouble. Kicked into the wall is Lasbra, but I don't think that's going to save the life of PBM just yet. Sanctified Field gets dropped. Pagon coming in from the top here, though. Damage could come through onto the Cleo, but the wall is going to be safe. Pagon able to make his way out through the mid lane. Fine-OK, still looking to make this rotation. Haddox, though, squaring straight up to him. He doesn't want to take the fight necessarily, but Fine-OK is getting surrounded here under the Tier 1 tower. The Baron Samity is very tanky, though, so he's going to be fine. The Tier 1 tower, though, you cannot say the same. But just real quick before I hand it back to you, Gordon, the flip side of this, Dragons, you've got Winds of Shemesh, you've got into the party coffin from Fino, even the ultimates from Pagon and Ice Shards from PBM. There's a lot of space control.
Yeah.
But even then, I think Bolts have the better version of that space control.
Yes, just period. Like, all 3 of those things you just listed, really, really good teamfight ultimates.
Sanctified
Fields on its own still outweighs the 3 of them for me. Like, it's
true.
just better. And then you add Tusky in, and the weight just heavily lifts, I think, on the side of the Bolts. But it is worth mentioning that is where I think a lot of the Dragon's success can come from. And it's just dealing with the Sanctified Fields right now that has been a little more of the problem. Because that's a perfect example of how wrong Tusky can go. And to the point where Barra probably wins this straight up as a 1v1 if Tusky connects. But if Pandacat's on point and is able to dash away, doesn't have to worry about it as much.
Polar Bear Mike might be looking at another toll from the Ymir tax and just the damage that comes through onto this immobile support. Not even something to joke at. That is going to be 5 deaths on the board for PBM, and well, this is the Ymir. I keep saying that term.
Yeah.
What I mean by it, when you play Ymir, there's very much the tendency you're either going to die a lot and lose, or die a lot and win. And at the moment, PBM is paying that Ymir tax. It's just about which side of that coin flip is going to come out of.
All right. I want to cover bright side for the Dragons first, and then talk about how good the Bolts are doing. Because obviously the charts
we need some
are
highlights.
very much in their favor.
We need some hope.
When you're looking down the barrel of like 6,000 gold, you've got to figure it out, especially 16 minutes in.
Yeah.
And a lot of that does come down to Mike. Mike is 0-5 and 1. And like you said, with Ymir, you either die a lot and lose, or you die a lot and win. Mike is almost all of the kills for the Bolts. So if you erase just him, it's 2-1 in favor of the Dragons. Granted, you can't just glance over him like that, but he's barely behind Jake in terms of level, so his impact there is still fine. The gold is definitely where they're starting to feel the bigger impact. Net worth, he's 1,200 down, so you're seeing a tier 2 built up for Jake, where there hasn't even been a 3rd item started for Mike. And so that's going to slow things down. A lot of that's just the coffers of the Bolts, though, working in their favor. When it comes to a late game Ymir, you don't care about the ult. Yeah, and honestly, you don't care too much about the life, although the life is nice to have because of numbers advantage. You want to know where the freeze is going and where that wall is going. At this point, Mike is nothing more than just a setup machine. And the longer he lives, the more setup there is, usually the more payoff there is for the team. And so right now, It's been awful for the Dragons because he's been dying almost instantly. But give him a few more minutes when he's a little tankier or able to survive a little bit more in the face of the bolts, then I anticipate that we're going to start to see a lot more setup from this guy.
Lasbra all alone on the right-hand side. There's the wall, but Osiris, the one character who's really not phased by them. As well, scratch that. Ganesh can dash through them too. So another one character, my bad. I just thought I'd correct myself. But no, I have to agree with you here. PBM, I mean, even in this situation, Haddix completely caught out. I'm not sure the damage is there. And if anything, PBM's going to take more of that back from Haddix. Has the Golden Blade, has the Frostbound, a lot of attack speed on the board from Haddix right now too, between the Shoguns and the Berserkers. So yeah, not necessarily in that situation, but replay the same encounter one more time, but Pagon's there, or even Pandacat, I think maybe you're looking at a dead Haddix.
Yeah, and I was curious to see what they were going to item into. I guess I'll have to hold that thought because Haddix, I mean, kicked up against the wall, should not die, so does get out of there. I've been watching Mike closely here because, again, when you have someone who's died this much, especially when it's the support, it make or breaks the team. And the next few fights, whether Mike lives or dies, is going to be a huge point. But he went for the emblem of increasing peril as opposed to starting up any other item. So he's not going to be as tanky. And admittedly is still trying to play catch-up, down 2 levels now on Jake. So doesn't have that second relic, doesn't have a full tier 3 item on him, and only has 150 gold. So it's not like he's like waiting to back and get one. And now we're in a spot where Mike is going to wall, he's going to freeze, maybe he'll be lucky enough and live long enough to freeze a second time, but he's going to pop this relic, and he's just going to hope that his team can win the fight heavily. And at that point, that's where the shift can make. Whether his life is forfeit or not, it should theoretically enable the rest of the team around him to step forward and take on the Bulls.
Potentially, but just taking a quick look at that goal, Pandacat melted so fast when held up to Lasbra, and luckily he had some peel that Pagon was able to make the rotation over, but I think if there's at least one other member of the Olympus Bolts there, Pandacat dies, maybe even Pagon does too. The big win there for Lasbra, though, is that Aegis taken away from Pandacat. Doesn't have the immunity to damage on the board anymore. Does still have the bead, so a little bit of safety there still, but look at what the Olympus Bolts are doing. They created space in the left lane, and now the Fire Giant is the target.
And honestly, the Bolts, like, they're too good right now. Like, they're too far ahead, they're too comfortable, and if you try to fight this as the Dragons, you probably lose the fight, and you're not going to get to that FG. I think this has to be surrounded by defense for them. I don't think that stepping up is a good idea, and they, rightfully so, back away, because the Bolts they're too clean. Everyone's got a lead except for Lasbra somehow, and that's honestly probably because he's been super active on the map while Sam has been farming. It's 2 levels over there in the duo lane for both players, as well as a level lead for solo and in mid. And so the experience gains that the Bolts have had, but also the gold that is in their pockets, is just making this a lot easier. Tier 2s you could probably step up to have defended, but there's around the tier 1 from the Dragons, and that is a weird call.
No shot, this isn't a Phoenix kill. But Polar Bear Mike using this wall super smartly. Barracuda has to step really out of position to get an angle onto that bird. And with a nice freeze, it's going to be enough to make sure that Barracuda can't just step out for free. But fine, okay, still alone in the mid lane. And while he's doing a lot of damage to Lasbra, Haddix and Lasbra combined to do way more back.
Yeah, you've got good abilities, but once those went on cooldown, you've got 2 auto attackers just beating you down. I will say, though, and you had highlighted this, we'll probably see it again in a second, but Mike is using these walls the same way we saw Genetics using them yesterday, just creating a blockable, and it's making it so that either Vin or Barra, or ideally both, have to get into a bad position in order to try and hit the Phoenix. It saves the bird a little bit longer, and it makes the Bolts have to take a bad choice in order to continue going forward. But they just Tusky, they might go in on this.
Potentially, but even if they don't, that Trebuchet is still raining in damage from out of tower range, and now the Olympus Bolts with a commanding lead score. I'm not just talking like, yeah, they're up. They are 11,000 gold in the lead right now. Only 2 kills in favor of the Jade Dragons. They've only been able to take out 2 tier 1s across the map. Map positioning is in the Bolts' favor. Golden experience is in their favor. Now this Phoenix fight should definitely be in their favor too. Haddix falls low and now pulled back into the cockpit of Final K, but the Phoenix should already be down. And now the Olympus Bolts are looking to get away from the Jade Dragons.
But will the Dragons let him? That's a good stun from Sam.
The army buff.
But it's just
faster.
getting in there. Yeah, it's like, can you fight? Can you do anything? Can you get aggressive? No, they're going to turn it around again.
Pagon caught out and the beads forced away from the Cleo. Lasbra up down. Final K caught out and look at the chip damage taken away by 2 people. Jake finds credit for that one, and now Polar Bear Mike running for his life. The Olympus Bolts are looking at an upshot of the Game 3 potential right now. The Jade Dragons have to put up a defense here. It is still 4v5. They have a lot of members left available to them. Pagon, though, already taken down to half HP. Lasbra kicked against the wall and put low, and the Olympus Bolts, for now, are saying, let's quit and pull back.
Yeah, they get repelled, but only so much, right?
Yeah.
you get bounced back, and oh no, we have to go do a Primal Fury. Oh no, there's a tier 2 we can... They're in a great spot. Everything is just going up.
What a shame.
And I've
Only
been thinking
2
about it
Phoenixes.
because, you know, after these games, there's always like that, okay, so where did it go wrong? And I'm still trying to track it down. Like, it wasn't like the first death for Mike that ruined this game, and it wasn't the deaths on the Final K, I don't think. It wasn't the death on the Panda Cat. And it was somewhere in between, and I think it happened, it was around the red buff for the Dragons. Of course, depending on how soon this game ends, you might be hearing me say this twice.
Potentially.
But like there was a death for Mike around the red buff with 4 members of the Dragons left surviving, but Haddix had rotated over, forced the other 4 out. And after they killed Mike, they just got a free Gold Fury from that point forward. And it felt like the Bolts since then have not had anything that went against them. I guess technically there was a single kill at some point in there, but it has been just so overwhelmingly in favor of the Bolts here. And when you look at level 20s, you look at the fact that like the experience gaps, except for the supports, is going to disappear soon. I don't know if the Dragons have enough. They need a huge pick like this.
They really do, but Sanctified Fields in combination with a emotionally devastating resurrection there from Awesome Jake. And now the Jade Dragons are in a choke point. Tusky finds 4 people to stun in the back, and Polar Bear Mike's going to pay with his life. Sam for Soccer going to fall down here as well too. Haddix finds the second. And now the Olympus Bolts charging forward onto Final K. This Baron Samity has no methods of escape, other than the fact that Awesome Jake just chooses to let him go this time around.
Tier 2 still up and left. Honestly, I mean, if Fire Minions were a little closer on mid and right, you have enough time that you probably could have run directly in. But with the Fire Giant buff gone, in fact, Fire Giant about to respawn, I like this idea. Get the Phoenix, get a massive advantage all across the board. Let them respawn, who cares? But at this point, the Bolts, like, you have such a lead that the Dragons are going to have to make the best plays, and only the best plays. They can't afford any slip-ups from this point forward just to get back into it. There's still 4 towers up on the side of the Bolts. You're not even looking at, cool, if we win FG, we win the game. You're looking at, if we win FG,
we have a chance.
Maybe we can get some Phoenixes.
Yeah. This is really a... like, look at the history books we've got. I think I can think off the top of my head maybe 2 examples of all 3 Phoenixes down. I'm thinking like OG Aquila, and I'm thinking SK at Season 7 Worlds.
Yep.
Those are the 2 examples that I can think off the top of my head. The Bolts are in such a good position right now. The Jade Dragons in maybe the most dire of dire straits that we have seen so far in this tournament.
It is one of the rarest things to see in Smite is a comeback from 3 Phoenixes down. And I think you're going to see why. And it's mainly, it's primarily just look at how much pressure. Fire Minions on left pulls 1 to 2 people away. Fire Minions in mid, another 1 to 2 people. Fire Minions on right, guess what? Another 1 person. At that point, 3 to 5 members of your team are separated across the map. Defending these Phoenixes is a completely different conversation. Can you?
No.
You could try. Is it going to be worth it?
No.
Probably not. They're going to die fast. They don't have a lot of health. And so this should be quick work for the Bolts. At this point, you are hoping just that the 9-5 changes to the Titan health and maybe the Titan's damage itself as a 6th man on your team is going to be enough to repel the Bolts.
You got to get something big, but there's a lot of great siege abilities for the Olympus Bolts. Look at Venenu, ladies and gentlemen, and just look at how he's going to end up using that Sanctified Field in the Titan room.
That's Such a strong ult.
Yep.
They have like no answers to it. I thought early on we saw that initial fight around the mid camps, and I was like, ooh, that was clever. I want to see more of that from the Dragon. We haven't seen any of it since then. In fact, it's actually just gotten worse for them. And so Vin is a huge deal in this fight. If they can force him to use it just defensively and get out with their lives, that's a big deal. The problem is that if is so massive. Getting just getting to Vin right now by himself, isolated, seems impossible. But getting Vin by themselves with a Sanctified Fields dropped and being able to live through the entire thing, yeah, that one is maybe the tallest order. So I think that they're waiting. The Bolts, you're not going to be able to win unless you go into the Titan room. They've got the fire minions on left and right, though.
Yep. And mid.
And with this point, the numbers advantage is about to overwhelm the Dragons.
Yeah, and this is so smart from the Bolts. They're not looking reckless, and this is a situation that teams always face. I think when they're in this position, they can get impulsive and reckless. This time around, though, the Bolts playing it super slowly. Two-man route from Awesome Jake should be enough to kick off the party, and moving into the Titan room. There's the Sanctified Field. Tusky comes through, looking to find the damage. Awesome Jake already pops that resurrection, and one falls down. Pagon already in the ground. Awesome Jake is reviving, but look at the health bars. Venenu is going to take a spill, and no damage has been dealt to the Titan just yet, but Lasbra finds Sam for soccer. Lasbra will fall down himself, and Gore, I think, well, never mind. Barracuda ripping through the life of Polar Bear Mike. Plus Panda Cat as well should put the nail in the coffin for the Jade Dragons. Olympus Bolts are taking us to 3.
Oh, man, that's... I don't know. If they... Like 1,000 more HP on that Titan. Maybe then you can give it a fight. Okay. It got a lot closer there than I think they would have liked. And honestly, than I was expecting. I have to give a huge shout out to Aegis on Panda Cat because it kept him just alive long enough to make it back to the fountain. Unfortunately, that time that he spent running to the fountain was time that he wasn't getting DPS, and so the Titan ends up taking a lot of hits there. But a lot of good damage from the Dragons. I think there's a lot of capabilities. But there's a weird world that we live in where that if the Dragons even win that one, that fight at the Titan room, your Titan's at half health. Your Phoenixes are down. There's no Fire Giant. There's 4 towers on the other side. You're still in a really bad game for yourselves.
Yeah.
So I think at this point, it's nice, like, you know, the Bolts get to end it. They push us to 3. Some of that is draft. Some of that's early game execution. I think there's just a lot of slip-ups for the Dragons that didn't go their way. Some 50-50s. That Pyromancer getting taken away did not help in the least. And so with the Bolts taking that lead and pushing it as far as they did, they just played well. And if they can do that again, then they get to earn their spot tomorrow.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're answering the question, will lightning strike twice? Come back in 5 to find out.
and welcome back to the Spring Masters Tournament in Season 9 of the SPL. And wow, what a back-and-forth set we've already got. Row, a 1-1 tie with the Bolts taking game number 2 over the Dragons means we're going to drag ourselves to a game number 3, which can make picks and bans very interesting. But the Olympus Bolts, I mean, we were talking a lot about the struggles that this team might have against this Ymir specifically, against the kind of comp and team fight that the Dragons have. But the Bolts just ran it down at the Dragons and won.
They were able to catch Mike out consistently. 0-5, maybe 6 at some point, just able to continue to kill him every chance they got, really, and taking every opportunity to build an early lead. And that's what they had. They're in control from get-go at this point. Barra, an early rotation. When you can be this later game god like Artemis and able to get a big impact ultimate at this stage of the game, you're a happy man.
And it's kind of like you were saying, when Mike throws down the wall, sometimes you might panic, go, oh, I need to burn my beads. But in this case, the Olympus Bolts, every time Mike threw down a wall, it really just felt like a challenge. Barrow was walking around them. Everybody was able to get past PBM in these team fights, to be able to get to that back line to get not just him, but the rest of his team.
Yeah, a wall is a very good offensive tool, but not so great defensive. Placing it while you're running away, maybe under yourself. If you're peeling for yourself, it's a little bit easier. But, you can't peel an Osiris in this example away from himself. Just has to peel anybody else who is coming. But again, a root over the wall, a 2 over the wall from Khepri. Ymir just can't get away from this Osiris and eventually gets pulled in. And that just happens time and time again. And you're getting pulled into an Artemis and an Oleron as well. So a really well-built composition by Olympus Bolts. Very happy with their win here as well. I mean, that's what we want to see.
But Nanu, very happy about that win.
I honestly don't know what that one is.
I think Bear
Cowboy, I suppose?
I think so. I think Bear might be the happiest out of all 5 of them. He is the happiest man in that room right now.
Yeah, well,
maybe
in his own home office.
Maybe in his own home.
Yeah.
Oh man! But Olympus Bolts finding the tie here in game number 2. That will tie up the set. Take us one more to figure out which of these 2 teams qualify to the next round of play, and which of them has to wait for the next set to conclude before they have another opportunity to qualify in. The number 1 and 2 seeds of the SPL duking it out. And what better poacher to have these 2 teams be the ones that are facing out for this first qualification slot.
Yeah, this is what we want to see from our top 2 teams from the last tournament and last split as well. So, a great competitive, and we're still relatively early into the tournament, a great competitive match already. This isn't even the finals yet, but this could be, maybe both teams do make it back to the finals as well. So, this is the kind of, that's the level we're at now in this tournament. We've seen the SEC players play. We've gone through, I guess, middle of the pack bracket yesterday, and now we're at the top tier of players. And one of these teams will just move straight on, and one of these teams will have to play for the rest of the day.
And we are still seeing kind of this constantly shifting and evolving meta as these days continue to go on. And no 2 teams are playing it exactly the same. You had the Titans were coming in with this very gung-ho style of, double/triple hunter composition. Yeah. The Dragons were starting to run that earlier on in the day. Now they've kind of switched over to this more team fight-oriented style of play. Everybody's kind of shifting around as the days go through, trying to figure out what truly works, what is that best method. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure if we found the best method just yet.
Not necessarily, but we don't know yet.
True.
But it looks like so far the Bolts, the Dragons, and I would probably vote the Kings and I guess the Titans as well. So all of our qualified teams so far from that bracket, and then what I would say is our top 2 teams from this bracket are already looking very strong and very confident in their strategies. All varying though, you're right. A lot of hunters in general, but then a lot of utility around those hunters, and then I guess a lot more assassins in the mix than I expected. We're seeing them in mid lane, solo lane, and everywhere. So they're ending up making the big plays in a lot of these team fights. Lasbr's had a great effect so far, but this game they were just able to pick off Mike wherever they want. So Guardian's really struggling. Warrior's not seeing so much love either.
And this is where the real fun comes down. Picks and bans for game number 3. Once you go through, typically, reserved maybe towards like best of 5 style of sets. When you start getting to the real depths of that, you start seeing much more targeted picks and bans when it comes to the opposition. But at least in these ones, you get to kind of see how the styles butt heads, how the minds really start melding together to figure out what is it going to take for us to find that win. As far as the bans are concerned to start out, though, nothing has really changed from those first couple games.
No, both teams confident in their strategies. They got to see each other play just this morning before they play each other, so they ended up with pretty set in stone strategies. Jade Dragons have valued the Artemis earlier in the day. This time, Barra would take it away. Now, Jade Dragons giving the fact that Bolt's a first pick, and they could have first picked the Hunter like they have here. They take away the Artemis, would rather play against the Dragon.
Uller going to be locked in. We've seen a little bit of flexibility with this god. We've seen him go towards solo lane. We've seen him go into the mid roll. We've even seen him, as traditionally, gone over towards the Hunter spot. And his build has kind of changed up a bit, too, where traditionally Ullr is much more ability-focused. You get things like Transcendence, Heartseeker, Jotun's Wrath. But we've seen some change-ups to the build to try and flex more towards this crit style of meta that's been coming up for the Hunters.
Yeah, I think it's up to just personal preference for the Hunter player, or maybe it's not in the Hunter role. You know, maybe mid laners prefer ability damage because they're used to that from mages. Solo laners seemingly do whatever they want, and then ADCs kind of just love the crit ADC meta anyway. So Khepri picked up by Jade Dragon, certainly something both teams can play. Jake already pulling it out and having a great game on that. They cleanse on the Gilgamesh kick before it connects, or just as it connects rather, to cleanse Barra before he got it. It was perfectly timed and really well played. Mike seeing something like that and saying, you know what, I can play that god too. It clearly did well last game in this meta, so I'll pick it up.
Take the hot pick away from the hot hands. Now the Olympus Bolts have to change up a little bit of their draft because that Khepri is taken away. There's always the potential of executes coming out, though. The 3 gods in the game that really would be able to abuse that, not quite so meta. Oath, probably the only person I would imagine would bring an Ao Kuang out. We did see a Thanatos hover earlier in the day. Not sure if we maybe even have the opportunity to see that in this one. And then Achilles, obviously, haven't really seen a whole lot of, if any of him, that I can recall this event.
Yeah, I just don't think he's favored very much in the solo lane right now, and that's where he was strongest. But Khepri, someone that's strong with very strong with 2 hunters on his team. So again, they pick up the Ullr and AMC. They've done that before. Both of these gods flexible. Panda Cat, arguably the best Ullr in the world, will probably take that one. But AMC could end up mid lane, could end up solo lane, or anywhere really. I think AMC mid has a generally good matchup against Morrigan. You can consistently get her out of that stealth as well, but AMC that is vulnerable to certain Morrigan transforms. So if there's an assassin picked, you could end up being in danger if you're the AMC. So Morrigan not able to rotate as much because she'll be pressured out by that lane pressure, and she won't be able to stealth as much aggressively as well because it's really, really hard to avoid those bees.
A little bit of flexibility with this Osiris between jungle or solo lane, so still some questions to be had for the Olympus Bolts. We at least know that for now it will not be a double hunter composition out of them like it is with the Jade Dragons. As the bans roll through, it's Baron and Amaterasu for the Jade Dragons, so focusing out some of that solo lane, which leads me to believe this AMC could be going back over to Fine OK.
Could be.
Where on the opposite side, the Bolts are going to take a shot at the Assassins, Susano and Fenrir both being banned away.
The Fenrir jungle ban, Susano maybe a flex, but mostly aimed at Pagon as well. I think the Susano would be a decent matchup into the Morrigan also. And 2 not great transformations for the Morrigan as well, so taking those away from Venenu as transform options doesn't feel too bad for them. It's just a valuable ban against the Jade Dragons when that seems to be so far the style that they're going for. Bolster up their backline with hunters, obviously the most support a support can get in Khepri, and then by banning away the assassins, you really just take away some of their utility. But they're going back to the triple hunter. This is obviously something they believe in. It was not a one-off against the Hounds.
No, they're going to see if it can now work. It was something that I believe as Mifflin was talking about, against these top teams, how well will this triple hunter composition actually work? Now, we really get to see it on display. The #1 versus the #2 seed, Dragons versus the Bolts. And that now leaves the option over for Sam for Soccer on his final pick. The Poseidon is open, the Habwa is open. Those are probably the 2 that immediately come to mind for him. And the Olympus Bolts might have to worry about that.
We've seen Nemesis before as well. I think it was the Titans that were playing Nemesis. And you just get this prot shred from Khepri too, and then the Nemesis ult, and then the AMC ult. So even though you're stacking physical damage, it doesn't matter too much because your abilities shred those protections for you. But, you got a backline to protect, so maybe they do pick something more utility focused. Or just, I guess maybe a Kraken could be utility focused, but just slam that Poseidon, and then all of a sudden your objective DPS is off the charts and you can run over a team if they're not ready for it.
Bolts are really taking some time to find their final 2 picks. They need their support, and Kumbhakarn could be a solid answer. We've seen him as the response when too many of these auto attackers start stacking up in the game. That way you can use that Mez, really slow down the pace. But forget about all of that. No Kumbhakarn, ESET going to be the matchup here. And now I posed this question to Charlie. I'll pose it to you. How do you kind of feel about these mage supports as of right now with this meta?
I love ESET. I love Nox. Baron, I'm kind of 50-50 on just because I prefer to see him in the solo lane as well. But ESET doesn't strike me as someone totally useful in this team comp. The silence not really doing too much. I guess you can silence out the dashes from the jumps, from Ullr and Hoyi. But maybe it's just more of a defensive character as well. Make sure Mike isn't able to pluck anybody because you could always stun it, you could silence it, Morrigan could one it. And then an Osiris jungle and a Bastet solo, I would imagine, being, pretty safe picks in terms of getting plucked as well. In Bastet, For Bastet, you're not getting in range very often, and even if you are, you're out of there quickly. And then Osiris doesn't often care if he's getting pulled in as well. So a decent counter draft by Bolts, but Jade Dragons have obviously. I was saying the similar things about Titans the other day, where they're just clearly confident in this team comp, and it's like, even though I have my opinions of it, there must be something that I don't know, right? They think it's strong for a reason. They've played a lot of games on this patch, so they have a lot of data behind their opinions. So we just have to wait and see, and they do their magic while we watch.
Yeah, we'll have to see the clash of minds when it comes down to the battleground. Jade Dragons with one final pick, most likely just going to assume that this is something that Sam is going to be need to pick up here, unless we see one of these hunters make their way into the jungle. And it will be Poseidon drafted up. So triple hunter, Poseidon, Khepri. How do you feel about this composition here, Ro?
I'm so unsure of it, but clearly the Jade Dragons are confident in it. They pick it against the Hounds, which, you know, I guess you could say is a weaker team because they are on the lower end right now in this tournament. But there's reason behind it, right? The objective DPS and the pressure is basically the name of the game. They need to get rolling to start with, and even if they don't, even if they're even with the Bolts at around, you know, 17, 18 minutes, Jade Dragons are still going to be pulling an objective well before the Bolts are going to be. I guess the reaction from the Bolts is to just Chernobog fly over. Osiris can bully these backlines as well, and Bastet can poke quite a lot. It's just a matter of finding. Against the Hounds, they had the Fafnir Hammer, right? So if they found the Fafnir Hammer, they would be able to pick basically whatever target they want. This game is going to be finding the Khepri Abduct, and if they find that on a frontliner, then they're going to blow them up.
And when it comes down to the Bolts up against this, I mean, you're running against all these auto attackers. We're even going to include Poseidon in here. We've been seeing a lot of rings kind of make his way into those builds. How important is stacking up the relics, the ores, the items that reduce this attack speed, reduce that kind of power? I mean, how vital is that going to be for the Bolts in this draft?
It's important, and I guess it bodes well for Osiris anyway. You can build a Witchblade, Iset can build something relatively tanky. I think it's more just about positioning. This is a unique team comp to be playing into, so you're not playing into an assassin. You just got to make sure your range is really good. So if the backline isn't close enough to hit you, then be confident. If they're close enough, then be careful and be ready to react to something like an Abduct. So I think it's more about that rather than, you know, itemizing differently, because Jade Dragons, like I said, they've got that prot shred anyway from those abilities, so they're not going to worry too much about it. And then obviously the magical damage from Poseidon is like a really great addition to all that physical damage on the Jade Dragons team.
Yeah, it's going to be a very difficult one for the Bolts to fight into. Objective is going to be the name of the game for the Jade Dragons. They're going to be able to kill just about anybody that Khepri pulls in that instance. Khepri finds one person without beads, you might as well kiss them goodbye with those hunters. Objectives are going to be a dangerous topic to kind of pop themselves out here. And I'm being told that we have a very special something to show. Barracuda tweeting out, yo, I'm delirious. And hearts go out to Barracuda, currently dealing with, I believe he has the flu, if I'm not mistaken, right now. So unable to be here in the studio, but still playing as well as he is.
Yeah. These two teams at the top of our league still incredibly, I was going to say confident, it's not the right word, although it's true, but talented in what they do. Barra playing from home, not feeling 100%, that's fine. He can play to this high level. And 1-1 between Dragons and Bolts, the top two of our league. What more could we ask for?
I mean, isn't that the Barracuda passive, though? Gets sick right at a major event and then turns around and kind of pops off and goes wild. I mean, maybe this, I'm not going to say this is his plan all along, but hey, maybe this is the secret that the Bolts need.
He plays well while sick. I think he won Worlds while sick, I might say. But yeah, many times I've seen him, he's sick at events, at Worlds, so he's basically just training for Worlds anyway, because it seems inevitable at this point.
Well, we'll see if the sick Barracuda and the rest of the Bolts are able to find a victory up against the Jade Dragons, get themselves that first qualification spot to meet up with the Kings and to meet up with the Titans in the final group. The Jade Dragons, they were able to take game number 1, had a bit of a fall in game number 2, so it's going to require them to be able to bounce back mentally to do so. Ro, if you were to put maybe a timer on this game for the Jade Dragons to be able to find that opening, to be able to find that win, where would you say the Jade Dragons have to grab it?
I need them pulling objectives at like 17, 18 minutes, and when they pull the objectives, don't even focus on the objective unless Bolts aren't nearby. Focus on the front line that's being baited in. If they can find those picks, then that's when they need to do it. If we start to push like 27, towards the 30-minute mark where EFG comes into play, then this team fight composition or this, extra, more traditional composition out of the Bolts, I think that becomes a little bit better.
It's going to be a tough one for both of these teams. Who's going to come out on top and qualify, and who's going to have to fight a little bit harder? Let's jump into game number 3 between the Bolts and the Dragons.
It is all or nothing. Thank you very much, Desk. It is all down to this one final game, as J-Mac just highlighted there. One of these teams go in this, well, for all intents and purposes, best of 1 right now are going to move through, and the other one is going to have to go back down and face whoever wins the next set of the day. for that second secured spot. So basically, the difference between winning and losing this game, Gore, is a whole lot of extra Smite.
Yeah, and that might even be an understatement. Like, it's a lot of extra Smite that you're going to have to go through. Best of 3 later today up against whoever wins between the Zavalks and the Hounds. And then you have to play the Kings, and then you have to play another winner between all that, and, between the Titans and the Dragons, so potentially again for the Dragons.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Smite in your way for whoever ends up losing this one. A win is a nice coast to tomorrow. Also means you're done for the day, which would probably be a very comfortable spot to be in for them to be able to relax for a little bit, watch the way the rest of the games go, and not worry too much about it. I like where they've gone with their draft, though. Again, maybe a little squishier. Admittedly on both sides,
yeah.
I think all around. But Lasbra back onto this Osiris. I think he played it very well last time around. The only big difference to me is, and a lot of it is looking at how these drafts worked earlier. Something similar for the Bolts. A lot of bits and pieces that worked, but you can tell squishier duo lane makes it a little harder to just survive, and beats have already been burned.
Barracuda takes a lot of damage there. Jake just doesn't quite have the same form of pressure potential as the amount of shred you can get from Kepri's Sun. You know, it does tick away protections every single time it does damage, and PBM going more aggressive here, but the body blocks from Jake so far keeping Barrett at a good spot, and it could be the turnaround onto Mike. Doesn't have the 2 to pop the crystal just yet. PBM gets hit with the stun, and the health bars are low on both sides. Jake could be in trouble. Polar Bear Mike going in for the hug, but Barracuda falls down low. Panda Cat is still here jumping onto Jake. And that'll be first blood for the Dragons. Get jammed.
I love Panda. Panda had blood, red in his eyes. He saw the kills, and it was just a matter of finding it. Honestly, yeah, Barra's got to play so careful around those angles. You still got to be careful. Look, that mana bar is not full for Panda Cat. It's got enough that one more Ricochet can always come out at any given time. Luckily for them, it's just a kill onto Jake. Granted, not great, giving first blood over to the opposing Hunter, who right now is already getting a lot of gold, right? Level 3 to level 2 for Barra. Feels like he's going to be able to get the Devos online a little earlier than what looks like it's going to be a Transcendence for Barra.
Pagon in a lot of trouble, but has to jump away. Luckily for him, that stun onto Lasbra is huge. He's going to let him get out just fine. Does take a large amount of damage, though. I think maybe a different situation. Well, I was about to say maybe if Pagon didn't have his jump there, he was dead, but I think that's maybe a bit of an obvious statement to make. Yeah, if Pagon didn't have any HP, he would have died.
If the health bar hits 0, if the Titan dies, you win the game.
That's
or lose
that's
the
what
game,
I've
depending
heard.
on if it's your Titan or not.
That's what I've heard too. Crazy how that spreads.
It's an unfortunate. It's a real epidemic of Titans out here. But luckily, I don't know. This is where things get very convoluted. This draft for the Dragons, with a lead, which it has, plays really well, gets further ahead, farms really well.
Whoa, really
continues
ahead.
to get further ahead, and then wins, right? That's how it works. It's just overwhelming, unrelenting force. And honestly, I think it works better now than it did earlier. Earlier, they had Fafnir. Fafnir works and synergizes, I think, well with the other 4 that are on the team. But Kepri gives them a second life, considering how squishy they are. I like that a little more personally. But I do think a lot of it is going to be flavor preferences. Setup potential, I think, from the Kepri, as well as tankiness just generally from the Kepri, is going to be there a little more often than the Fafnir. And, of course, the hammer on Fafnir, much harder to hit than, like, the hug from a Kepri. And while the hug puts you in a lot more danger, it does still have, I think, a lot of merits to it. So I like the Dragons draft a little more, just a teensy bit more, than what they were pulling through earlier today, and it's just because of this Kepri. And a lot of that right now is because I've seen this draft work. I've seen it work when it gets a gold lead, and right now with First Blood and the gold falling in their favor, I think it is my inclination to lean a little more towards them. That being said, Jake gets a little more powerful over the next few items, so I expect to see more there. But there's Kraken in mid.
Takes a lot of damage, but he's going to be fine for now. Any other patch, and he would be dead by now, but Sanford Soccer surely falls down here too. Venenu using that Morrigan transformation so well is going to claim a return kill in favor of the Bolts. They are still behind though, Gore, but that one kill minimized that lead from 1,500 to about 300.
Yeah, I mean, a massive kill for them, but you can see where that pressure is going everywhere. Also, a more recent Bastet skin getting run out there by Haddock. Almost like surprised me for a second. I'm so used to seeing the older
Shadow
ones.
Cat skin.
And it looks good.
It's a good skin.
A, but B is a good transformation target for Venenu, not just because of the levels, but obviously the CC and the damage. When you've got 3 people this susceptible to CC and just the outright burst an assassin can have, changing into either Lasbra for chase down or very more often, I wouldn't be surprised to see hi-rez, and having that ult to pull them in, it either is going to burn beats or it's going to burn their health bar, and in some lucky circumstances, it's going to burn both. And so you're in a great spot for that. And again, I think with the Morgan transformations, the Osiris in the jungle, and then ESET slowly but surely growing into the tankiness that is this mage, you get Circle of Protection, you get silences, you get an insane stun. I think a lot of what the Bolts have 20 to 25 minutes into this game feels awesome. It feels amazing to play with, and maybe not so much to play against. But if the Dragons can push that lead back to where it was earlier, if they can find some more kills, get these carries online, it changes everything.
hi-rez, blink pull from PBM from out of nowhere. No leap available for him just yet, but a beautiful route to catch it when he does. But the jump back, I don't think he's going to find it. One more auto from Fino should do it. And there it is going to go. And to further on your point a little bit, Gore, Venenu has so many options. I know you already highlighted hi-rez and Lasbra, but I'm looking at both teams. I'm thinking there are maybe 2 characters that Venenu doesn't necessarily want to go into, and that's like Fino K and Pagon. And even then, you can make a case for either of them, but like Sampha Soccer, if you need some secure, you can go get that Kraken on your side. If you need a Rez, you can transform into the Capri. Rez one of your teammates. You can have double circular protection.
That's exactly what I was saying. I was going to ask you about that because, like,
it's crazy.
It seems so. But imagine a world with 2 circles of protection.
Yeah.
Not only can double the health bar, of which you can then secure the objective if you both pop it at once, but also you can double the heal. That seems really good for team fights.
And double the protections.
And double the prots, and double the circles of those protections.
You could even make a Venn diagram of death.
Where if you say you don't want to be in the center,
you don't put them in the same
place. This side
place.
is dead. This side is also dead. But those in the middle, they're double dead.
Well, think about it this way.
They go to extra hell.
Think about it this way. If you put one down, what does Sampha Soccer have in his ult? A giant circle. What does Pandacat have in his ult? A giant circle. You can put that down on top of the circular protection. But if you have 2 E-sets, you can put 1 circular protection here, 1 someplace else, and then you've got a Venn diagram where you're not going to get hit by the Kraken or
honestly,
the Sunbreaker.
like if you're talking space denial, that is the most map control that you could have. Like the amount that you can do, because Kraken is going to disappear pretty quickly.
For sure.
It's just like the Suns and the circular protection, because of the longevity of the ability, just creates a no-play zone.
Yep.
Will we even see it? Who knows? But is it fun to think about? Absolutely. I admire. I want to see Vin do it.
Yeah,
I'm going to will it into existence. If I yell loud enough,
maybe he can hear you.
Maybe he can hear me over his headset.
Yeah. I think I think it's one of those things, right? I love theory crafting with Morgan because, well, actually it can make some awesome things happen, like making awesome Jake 408 disappear. Sampha Soccer could be in a similar situation, but a nice res from Michael. Save it for now, but Barracuda coming in from the left-hand side through the skies. Barra finds himself a target, 1-for-1 trade support for mid laner, jungler, but Barracuda's going to fall down here as well. Pagon claims credit for that one, and surely Veneno will perish here as well. Double kill for Pagon, and a 3-for-1 trade out in favor of the Dragons.
All right, I got to say this one, and I got to get it out of the way. We're going to get a clean cut of it. That was a sick play from Barra.
Yeah.
Boom. There
Right.
we go.
Gotcha. Because he's ill.
Yeah,
I understand.
he's not feeling great. Either way, really good, I think, presence of mind from him. Ulting, coming over, gets the kill. I think good presence in the game and in the team fight. Unfortunately, that is so deep for the Dragon. 9 minutes in. Look, we were talking about it last game or 2 games ago, and I think we've been talking about it for the last week and a half. These towers aren't the same anymore. They got jacked up. They're roided out. They are strong.
They've been going to the gym.
And they will rip you apart. Diving and going that deep between a tier 1 and a tier 2 is, I think, admirable for the amount of kills they got. But Jake got burned almost instantaneously. And then Barra, I think, with a good kill, but then in a bad position afterward. The getaway wasn't going to exist there. And from that point, you're running not through the tower. I think at 9-4, 9-3, Season 8, Season 7, et cetera, you just run through the tier 1 there. And yeah, it hurts, but only one guy takes like 2 shots, 3 shots.
Yeah.
And the rest of you get out scot-free. with this patch, either you run through the tower and one of you dies, probably another one getting severely injured, or you run through the jungle, which is the safest option, which gives way more the opportunity for the Dragons to chase you down in a less direct path to safety.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
so unfortunately, it's just a bad choice of pathing.
It's just unfortunate. I like the idea there, but unfortunately, as you mentioned, these towers have been following Dolson's training routine, and are thus roughly twice
Gotta
the
throw
size
it
that
out
they
there.
were.
While I called the towers roided out, we are not saying that
Oh no!
Dolson
Yeah, sorry. No, I didn't realize that would be the implication, but no, absolutely. hi-rez has started up here, but I thought Jake was going to steal it away with the Spirit Ball. That two people knocked up by the Kraken. Sanfasoccer is hit by that Resurrect, so he's going to be just fine. Has so much speed to move with. Not only is he a Poseidon, but Jake, luckily the silence comes through. I thought he was going to die to the tick through from Polar Bear Mike, but luckily the silence is able to give him that shield.
It's time to call it.
No deaths for the Olympus Bolts in that engagement, but the Pyromancer are taken away, and this is really similar to what we saw in game number 1 from the Jade Dragons. Not in this set, but at the start of the day, where it's almost a death by a million cuts here, Gord. They are taking, so far, every objective.
Yep.
All but one Totem of Ku has gone the way of the Jade Dragons as well. They've got so much control of not just their lanes, not just the jungle, but the objectives in the neutral farm as well.
Yeah.
That it's going to be really difficult for the Bolts to come back into this. But that being said, the XP difference isn't that wide.
That's maybe their best bet right now, is the fact that they aren't too far behind experience-wise. Levels are going to be a little easier to attain for them. The good news for the Bolts right now is that this is a team that I think can play well from behind, and honestly, I think they still have a lot of their power spikes on the horizon, right? I think this is a team that works great in late-game team fights. Jake hasn't even finished the mask off yet. It's not like you're at your tankiest for some of these characters, and you're not seeing their full potential, their full unbridled potential at this point. The Dragons, on the other hand, this is about exactly what this draft wants to do and needs to do to find success. I think if they can continue on this rate, they've been doing a good job so far, and a lot of it comes down to where their itemization is. You can see a lot of lifesteal coming through. The Ullr's gone for a little more ability-based. And with the Jotuns online, should be able to throw out that damage a little more often. Crit is now there for Panda Cat, so already the guy who's great at boxing is even better at this point in the game. And if they can continue this pace with this amount of kills, this amount of objectives, this amount of jungle steals, etc., then this is going to be the smoothest game for them. If the Bolts can hold on for like another 8 or so minutes and go in without too big of a deficit, ideally maybe even making it even, then all of a sudden, those things we were talking about earlier, Vin's ult comes into a huge factor in the equation. So does Jake's. So does Bera's ability to rotate outside of where Panda Cat is and things like that. I think the grouping in the 5-on-5 from the Bolts has a lot of strengths to it. It's just getting there on equal footing that is going to be the most difficult thing for them.
For sure. And at the moment, just heading back to neutral is what the Bolts would like to do, but the Dragons have something different on the agenda. Gold Fury is going to be it. And just with the sheer amount of stuff they're able to put onto this, I'm not sure that there's much chance for Jake to be able to steal this one away, and it is going to be 0. Jade Dragons once again doing the same hit-and-run tactics they were playing against the Hounds earlier on in the day, Gore. Just get an objective, get out. Get an objective, get out. Get a pick, get out. This is really fast-paced from the Dragons. And, I mean, just as you mentioned, if they keep this up, the Bolts are going to find themselves very quickly in a position where they cannot fight back.
That's the problem, right? If at this rate, 10 minutes from now, the Dragons will be up, if it's been 13 minutes, 14 minutes, they got like 6,000 gold. Then in another 10, they find themselves up another 8,000, so like 18K or some weird math in there. Either way, they get enough of a lead that at that point, it's almost no question. At that point, you're looking at, okay, cool, all the towers have been taken, the Fire Giant's gone, the Pyromancers, Gold Furies, etc., they're all just dead. Instead, the Bolts are hoping for is either a massive plateau, which luckily for them right now, there's no Pyromancer, there's no Fury available, considering it just got taken by the Dragons. And so it is going to slow down a little bit. But they have to find kills and be a little proactive, get some of that neutral farm back in their favor, take some chips away from the Dragons, get the next Pyromancer, ideally enter at an equal state, because otherwise you've got 4 people who are really good damage dealers, and at any given time, they will have a second life for at least one of them, as long as Mike is able to survive. And that's ignoring the setup that Mike can bring and the setup that some of them have. You've got good stuns, maybe not the most reliable from PandaCat and Pagon, but they still exist. And then, of course, the Whirlpool from Poseidon is enough of a slow that any hunter that stands that close to, or close enough to hit someone standing in it, they're going to be able to shred them through. So the Dragons are in a good spot, but they can't coast. They still have to stay proactive.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree with you there, Goy. It's going to be a tough position for them. And I want to highlight, we've seen Jake go and be able to contest these objectives twice now.
Yeah.
And this is the big, not necessarily problem, but it's the trade-off for going into this E set as a support rather than in that mid lane, or even in the jungle, is that essentially you're trading off the giant secure potential that E set has with that circle protections, and you're trading it off for the CC and an extra bulk, right? And I think if Jake is playing any other position there, A, I think Jade Dragons would kill him.
Yeah, yes.
But B, I think he's a lot more of a threat to steal away those objectives.
Yeah, it's that weird thing where right now, Jake, like that circle of protection, we always talk about being the best secure, but I think you highlight maybe the biggest point of that is that when it's on a mage, it's one of the best secures in the game. Right now, Sam, I would argue, probably has slightly better secure on a Kraken because he'll have more damage in the build than what we'll see from Jake. But a fully charged circle protection, even from support, is still something that you can't risk. And that's where that factors in, right? Jake right now is in enough of a position to still be present, and he can walk up to objectives. But it won't deal as much damage. He might survive long enough that the charge can come down. But unfortunately, he's also slow. And so getting in there to throw it down in time is just as hard as actually surviving long enough to have that burst be capable. So around Fire Giants, I don't know if you want to rely on him heavily as like a steal potential, even though it exists. But when it comes to securing, the Bolts can feel at least a little confident in that.
Absolutely. And, you know, worst case scenario, if they really need a steal or a secure, look back at Venenu. You know, we've already talked about the Kraken, stealing away the Kraken from Sam, or even the Suns from PandaCat, both decent options. Probably the Kraken a little bit better than the Suns in terms of raw, instant damage.
Yes.
But there is, like, we don't need to look at Jake for steal. Sorry, I should have clarified. That's not what I was trying to put out there. I was just remarking that Jake has less damage available to him in that situation.
Now Vin, though. Vin could be sick at steals.
Oh,
yeah. The Morgan. It would be interesting to see. Look at this rotation, though.
Jake finds himself surrounded by 3. Wow. Then, they got to split off. The Jade Dragons go 2x2. Hurrah, hurrah. Haddock's looking to find a little bit of rooting there, but the Cat not quite going to find it. Jake in a bad position, but steps into the circle protection for a little bit of healing. Jumping forward, though, is PandaCat, and it's going to be Pagon finding the credit for that one. Fine, okay, though, is saved by PBM, and now Lazar and Haddock's forced to turn on their heels and run away. But now Haddock's in trouble himself. Pagon should be able to claim credit for that kill. Oh, it'll be PandaCat with a double bounce instead. Now Lasbra under the tier 1 tower. Well, what tier 1 tower, I think, is the question that the Jade Dragons ask themselves as they clean up a third.
You've got this many hunters on your team. Towers don't mean too much. Granted, again, with all the buffs, a little harder to kill off. Barra maybe showcasing that a lot. He's got a minion wave, and it still takes a little bit of time to deal with that. But between Fire Giants, and especially if they get the buff, tier 2s are going to be very easily destroyed by the Dragons here. And I think you get to see a lot of that in that fight. Single target damage isn't great. They unfortunately proc the res on the Fine-OK. And so, you know, even the small moments the Bolts had that could have been big wins for them end up slipping through their fingers because of the way the Dragons comp is played. And they're getting small consolation wins. I think getting a Fury in a tier 2 is a big deal, but they waited till they got Fire Giant, pushed up left side Trebuchet. Soon enough, I anticipate we're going to watch that mid Trebuchet start walking forward. And now they're going to be able to either push with an objective like that or run towards that right side exposed Phoenix while those two split push and force the attention of the Bolts to be separated.
Well, luckily for the Bolts, they do pick up the Oni Fury there, so they have a little bit of a buffer. That left, the Trebuchet in left isn't going to be as effective at killing this wave.
Yeah.
But, I mean, on the flip side of that, you got PBM and PandaCat here who should make short work of that. But on the right-hand side, you get a little bit of extra protection for this exposed Phoenix, right? And you see over there. Haddix is pushing this wave in. I'm not sure he'll be able to take the tier 1 by himself, but he'll definitely have the option to. But the Olympus Bolts really need to rally here. Everyone's kind of everywhere while the Jade Dragons are looking to run down that left lane.
And I really like how the Dragons are playing this, because look, like the Trebuchet's slow. And you can see that, but they've got a minion wave and they've got Fire Giant. They're already knocking on the door of the Phoenix, and Mike, he sees that no one's around. They just walk in.
And they have no reason not to. Jake walks forward, looking to find some damage. Kraken's going to come through and hit Venenu, but the Aegis is going to be on point. Sanfasokka's health bar, though, is super low, and Bino gets scooped up by the Hunter of Bast, but a beautiful resurrection from Mike will save the life of the Soul Laner for yet a scarce few minutes, and he's going to be fine for now until Lasbra and Venenu get to him, combining to that one, but Lasbra will pay for that with his life. Jake is going to get turned around on, and the Jade Dragons are back on the offensive.
Yeah, just one more hit. Sam credit for the kill, plus they've got the Trebuchet working for him here. Look, it's unfortunate to lose Fine OK, but a 2-for-1 trade plus a Phoenix. Yeah, the Dragons are not too upset by it now. They can start the same kind of tear, but with a huge numbers advantage in mid.
And now the Trebuchet in left and the Trebuchet in mid doing work, blinking forward. Haddix is eviscerated before he has a chance to react to Polar Bear Mike giving him a hug.
I think game number 1 and game number 3 have been great examples of the Dragons. I mean, maybe Bear's got a lot of damage, but nowhere near enough for this.
The Nenu was able to secure one onto Sam, but there's no way the Jade Dragons are able to close this one out, and the Olympus Bolts, unfortunately, were not able to replicate that game 2.
I think, look, Bolts look phenomenal in game number 2 there. Game 3 got out of hand, and it got out of hand quick. But that's what that draft was drafted to do, right? That is a draft that is built to start winning, and then keep winning, and then win harder after that. Like, it just stacks and compounds on itself. In a world of the TTK being changed, you know, with Snowball being much more difficult to do, that's what that draft does anyway. And the fact that it's able to do it in this meta, I think, is a testament to what the Dragons are capable of and how they play. And then you balance that in with a couple of missteps. I think it's just a squishy draft early on that wasn't able to get proactive on the Bolts. It kind of enabled the Dragons to continue that route. Game 2 of the Bolts makes me think that they have no worries right now, no big worries immediately in this tournament. But I do think that they need a little bit more work, a little bit of cleaning up to figure out what's going on. Granted, I know it's not easy playing with Barra feeling sick and things like that, but I do think that they have the potential. We've seen it there. It's just that that team's really, really hard to beat, as it turns out.
They really, really are. And well, speaking of the Jade Dragons, let's ask the desk just how the Bolts got jammed.
I think that's just the answer itself. The question is the own answer. They just got jammed. That was what, 21 minutes of play at that point?
Yeah.
And to now answer the question that was asked earlier in the day, can this style of composition work against the top level of teams? Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I didn't like it coming in when the Titans brought it in, and then Jake Dragons, I thought it might have been a one-off this morning, but they're showing that they believe in this strategy, and it does work. What I was saying yesterday about this strategy probably not being great was wrong, clearly. They just took it to, I guess, statistically the second best team in the world, and Jade Dragons now proving again that they are on top right now in this tournament. So, I mean, I can't judge them for the strategy. It clearly works. Obviously, it has to work in the early game, but what better team can make it work in the early game than the Dragons?
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that loves to run it down as early as they can, especially this phase. I mean, this has been kind of the name of the Dragons for the entirety of their existence, whether it be with this team specifically or going back all the way to the Ghost days. They're a team that loves to thrive in these early game scraps. And now that they've given us, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, our fastest game of the entire event so far, which is around 21 minutes.
Yeah, and very fast for what we expected from this patch, but I guess that's what happens when you have 3 Hunters and a Poseidon, and the Khepri actually really being my star here. Great Kraken by Sam there over the wall, but Khepri, every time Bolt's got a chance to fight back, maybe Jade Dragons overstep their welcome just a little bit, Mike was always ready with those Khepri ultimates, very clutch on those to make sure that the Bolts could never fight their way back into this game, and also just his of Darks and keeping up the pace of this game. We saw him do it on Fafnir earlier, always finding these hammers, and this time he goes blink Khepri and he's able to blink pluck people to force these fights and just really run it down in the early game so that they can properly utilize their team composition.
And that's something that, you know, we were kind of talking about with their game 1 composition, which is they find these pulls, these plucks onto any single person.
Find CC, get kill.
Yeah, we have the CC, they're going to die. That was the name of the game in game number 1. That was the name of the game in game 3, and those are the 2 that the Jade Dragons are able to find their success out here. And you look across the board, you only see 14,000, 12,000 damage. That seems super low. But again, this is the fastest game that we have seen so far this event. The Jade Dragons have really shown that there is a play style that they're good at going with. There's a maybe not necessarily the clear-cut way to play this style of meta, but they've at least figured out what these first 20 minutes are.
Generally, when you get this unique of a strategy, you start to like look at, if I'm the Bolts and I'm guessing I'm going to be playing Dragons again in the future in the coming days, then I start to look at how I can beat this strategy. What gods do I need to ban away? Well, there's too many hunters in the hunter role because they can all pretty much do the same thing. So maybe I have to look at banning away some of that initiation like Capri or Fafnir and something like that. But we've got plenty of games before something like that happens.
Well, we do have a few more games today to be played. Let's take a look at the bracket so you can see what's all gone through and what we can still expect with the Dragons and the Bolts now meeting up in this best of 3. Dragons move on, and they're the first team to advance to group number 7. They'll be joined with the Titans and the Kings. And now we still need one more to get there, but it's going to take a little bit more. Eldritch Hounds and the Valhalla Valkyries will be our next matchup. The loser of that set, they're done. Their tournament life is over, and they cannot proceed any further in Smite Masters. The winner, well, their prize is that they get to face off against the Olympus Bolts for one final qualification round.
It's a bit of a punishment, I would say. Obviously, we just saw Jade Dragons beat Bolts pretty handily, especially in that third game. But Bolts in that second game able to fight back really, really well. So it gives me the opinion that they're a very strong team and still at the top on this new meta. Whereas we've got Valkyries and Hounds kind of struggling at the bottom of this. I say at the bottom, there were 16 teams in this tournament. So they're in the middle of the pack, really. And they're going to be able to earn their spot to take it up against Bolts.
I mean, the fact that we have the number 8 seed SPL and an SCC team still this far in the tournament is a true testament for them. But only one of them gets to move on. We'll figure out who's going to be right after this.
What's up, guys? Mifflin here, back again for another Tiny Mike interview. Today, we have a special treat. One of the SCC teams who were able to come up through the gauntlet and make it all the way up through to the SPL level of play in week 2 of Smite Masters. We've got the Eldritch Hounds here, and we're gonna go in and ask them a couple Mifflin interview questions.
Yes, sir.
What's your favorite rap battle of history?
The Russian one, the Stalin versus Putin.
Teuton? Rem? I gotta ask you a couple questions. Have you ever heard of the anime ReZero?
Yes.
And are you a Rem or a Rom fan?
I've never watched the show, but I know that context.
One more time?
I've never watched the show, but I know the context.
Okay, so the question.
Can't really answer it directly.
Okay, well, I don't know what to do with that. What kind of shampoo and conditioner do you use?
I use 4-in-1.
Don't lie.
4-in-1?
What's the one you use here?
Really?
Yeah, I use 4-in-1. He uses the hotel one here.
Okay, dang. Because normally, those like bundled ones aren't really like great for your hair.
No, that's great.
Okay, I mean, he's got the support bonus. Every support I have ever seen has great hair, and it's kind of not even fair. Why do you have so many T's in your name?
You mean H's?
What did I say?
You said T's.
I meant H's.
I couldn't get OGOs with 4 letters, so I had to add 2 H's on that bad boy,
Okay, all right. Do they stand for anything different?
No.
No? Okay, well, I thought that could be something. Is there anything else you guys would like to say? Howl on 3? 1, 2, 3. Okay, just me. And that was our Tiny Mike interview with the Eldritch Hounds. Thank you very much. My name has been Mifflin, and this has been Tiny Mike.